Chapter 63. Young and Refined? Lan Chui Yubuja. Hey, young man, young and refined. Masturbation is bad for your health. Badeo Zhangzi, what do you mean by young and refined? I don't understand anything. Tudufeichio. Hey, I'm so embarrassed that I'm turning yellow. Feng Jin blushed and said in a low voice, Lanting, don't slander me. When did I ever do such a thing? Jiang Pingji looked down on him even more. If you don't do such a thing, do you want to see a famous doctor? Feng Jin was speechless. Was this the legendary yellow mud that fell into one's pants? Even if it wasn't shit, it was still shit? Who said one had to look for girls in a brothel? Couldn't he just listen to the music and watch the beauties dance? It seemed like nothing good ever happened when he saw Jiang Pingji. Feng Jin took a sip of tea to calm himself down. At that moment, he noticed Su Ku, who was sitting behind Jiang Pingji, and asked, This is? Jiang Pingji said, My new page boy. He's arrogant, but he has some skills. Maybe he'll be of great use in the future. Feng Jin was surprised. I can't believe I heard such high praise from Lanting. He must be extraordinary. He had seen Jiang Pingji's mouth, but he didn't know how her eyes worked. It seemed that no one could hide from her. Su Ku was valued by her, which meant that he wasn't weak. That made the young and energetic boy want to compete with him. Love, go, small, talk, net ku for a moment. Feng Jin had forgotten something important. Lu Lanting was a girl. Jiang Pingji glanced at him and said as she ate her tea, No matter how extraordinary he is, he's still my accountant. To be honest, the tea in this era was very different from the tea she had imagined. There were many spices added to it, and the taste was hard to describe. Strangely enough, the more she drank, the more she got used to the taste. It was terrifying. Lanting, you don't play with words? Feng Jin smiled and nodded at the Langjuns. He whispered to her. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. It has never been my style to attack the enemy's strong points with my weak points. Feng Jin thought about what she was good at and silently face-bombed. She shouldn't have come to a place like this, okay? There are also activities like horse riding and archery at the assembly. You can show your skills there. Feng Jin comforted her. Even he, who was in Shangyang, had heard of Lu Shi, the gifted scholar of Hejian County. Lu Lanting, as his son, was illiterate and had no knowledge of poetry. This was completely unexpected. However, everyone had their own strengths and weaknesses. Just because the father was brilliant did not mean that the child had to be a master of the literary world. Oh! Jiang Pingji glanced at the Langjuns, who looked like peacocks spreading their feathers, and laughed disdainfully. I heard that in spring, the male animals like to show off their strong bodies and extraordinary abilities to the females. With their abilities, they can play the guqin, sing, and recite some poems that make them feel sour, but it's too much for them to ride a horse, shoot an arrow, or throw a pot, and so on. Love go, little safe neck of Feng Jin was speechless. He should not have talked about this topic. If they continued, he was afraid that he would not be able to leave the assembly alive. He would be beaten to death. Feng Jin cleverly changed the topic to prevent Jiang Pingji from saying something more provocative. Why is Lanting here at the assembly today? It was different from the usual poetry and literature gatherings. Today's assembly was more of a blind date. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows at the landscape screen and said in a warm tone, Jing is here too. If it had been someone else, they would have thought that Jiang Pingji missed her fiancé and took the opportunity to come to the assembly to relieve the pain of longing. However, Feng Jin was not an ordinary person. He and Jiang Pingji had not known each other for long, but the few times they had interacted, they were as familiar as old friends. Feng Jin frowned and asked in a voice that only the two of them could hear, Does the Weiss want to break off the engagement? Huayu, have you forgotten? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and her eyes were filled with ridicule. This marriage is not going to last. Jing is at the age to discuss marriage and should get married after the wedding ceremony. There are not many Langjuns of the right age in Hejian County. Shouldn't we make plans early? In ancient times, marriages were all set early. They waited until they were of a certain age to find someone they liked. When Feng Jin asked this, his expression changed. He seemed to have been tricked by himself. You don't feel unhappy at all? Jiang Pingji responded by rolling her eyes in annoyance. Feng Jin was speechless. Oh, the person in front of him was a girl, but he could not help but think of her as a brother. Since you already know the purpose of this gathering, Lanting should not have come. Even if she was only a fake husband on the surface, the Wei residents' actions were still giving her a green hat, okay? Jiang Pengji said, do you think I can ignore the sun outside just because I covered myself with the blanket and slept in? Moreover, I really like Jing. A good girl like her should have a good husband. I came to see what kind of a Langjun the Weiss are interested in and help Jing, or judge him. No matter what the Weiss were like, Wei Jingxian was indeed innocent. Under the circumstances where there was no conflict, love for beautiful women was above everything else. Then what did you see? Feng Jin did not like to gossip behind people's backs, but he was saying it in front of them. Jiang Pingji was not Feng Jin. She had no qualms. While she was drinking tea, she looked at one person. A real idiot. The fragrant powder on him came from different maids. There are probably 3 of them. One of the maids is pregnant. She's around 5 months pregnant. Feng Jin could listen carefully at first, but after a while, he felt that his worldview was broken. This one is even worse. He is lusting after his brother's wife. I guess he had many romantic dreams last night. That one likes men and is cold to women. If she marries him, she will probably be a widow, Jiang Pingji gossiped with Feng Jin in a low voice. As for the one in pink with flowers on his hairpin, he is addicted to sex and has a tendency to abuse women. Hee, what a beautiful face, but he is filthy on the inside. Whoever marries him will be unlucky. As for the one in green, he is considered loyal, but sometimes he is a little muddle-headed. He is usually too cautious and can only be considered average. His widowed mother is strong. I am afraid that the bride will be tortured if she marries him. He is not a good choice. As he spoke, another youth dressed in a bluestone-colored robe walked in from outside. His grace was not inferior to Feng Jin who was beside him. Feng Jin suddenly laughed. Lanting, look at that one. What does he look like? At first glance, he looks all right. Unfortunately, he is not a good man. Chapter 64. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Feng Jin's eyes lit up. He continued to ask, apart from these, is there anything else? Jiang Pingji sneered. He came from the same brothel as you. How could you not know? He was hugging left and right, and one of them was feeding him snacks in his arms. What a carefree life. To put it bluntly, we fought for a few rounds. We had to wash up before we rushed over. Feng Jin's pale face turned red again. He felt even more awkward and uncomfortable than before. Why did he hate Lu Lanting so much? He knew Lu Lanting was ruthless, but he still wanted to be bullied. Jiang Pengji glanced at the Langjuns who were still chatting and talking about poetry. No matter how beautiful they were just a pile of weak bones in her eyes. They were so weak that it was disgusting. Jiang Pengji threw the teacup on the floor. Boring. Takshu, Suku, follow me. She stood up and walked past Wu Majun. She did not see the awkward expression on his face. From afar, Wu Majun had seen Feng Jin chatting happily with a handsome young Langjun. He wanted to come over and talk, but he did not expect Feng Jin to stand up and leave with a cold face. The change in attitude was so drastic that the suspicious Wu Majun could not help but overthink. Feng Jin smiled and shook his head. He was helping Jiang Pingji out. Lanting is not good at poetry. Looks like he's annoyed. Wu Majun sat down. The unhappiness in his heart dissipated a little, but he still minded. Who is that Langjun? He had left the others behind and went to the noble lady. They seemed to be chatting happily. Wu Majun felt that such a person would not amount to much. Feng Jin smiled and introduced him as if he did not see the dissatisfaction in Wu Majun's eyes. Lu Zhongqing, the second Langjun of Lu County chief's family. In all of Dongqing, Lu Shi from Hejin County was the only person called Lu Zhongqing who was also the county chief. Of course, the title, County Chief Lu, would have to be changed in the near future. Wu Majun's expression was much more relaxed. and there was even a hint of enthusiasm. Although Lu Shi was not in the imperial court and his official position was not prominent, no one in the imperial court dared to ignore him. Not everyone had the ability to bring a barren county back to life and make it prosperous. That county's annual tax revenue was comparable to that of 2 states, and it was also a major grain-producing county in Dongqing. Wuma Jun was still suspicious. So it's the Lang Jun of County Chief Lu. But why did he leave just now? Lanting loves martial arts and seems to be interested in chivalry. He is very impatient with poems and songs. How could he be interested? Feng Jin was still gentle and seemed a little helpless. She's only 12 years old now. She's young and impetuous. Let her be. Wuma Jun knew Feng Jin well. Feng Jin liked to talk about things that were difficult to understand, and Lu Lanting was probably angered because of this. Thinking that he had found a reason, he finally revealed a gentle smile and said, Huaiyu, since Lu Langjun doesn't like to talk about those things, why don't you just change it? Why make him leave in anger? It is said that County Chief Lu loves his son as much as his own life, and he is the General Evaluation Officer this year. Aren't you afraid? There was an evaluation every 3 years. Although Lu Shi was only a county governor, his status was even comparable to that of a governor. He was specially promoted for this year's evaluation. If they offended Lu Shi at this time, they might get their heads blown off. Feng Jin said carelessly, County Chief Lu is an honest and upright person. Why would he care about the conflicts of a child's family? Which official in Dongqing's officialdom was not in cahoots with one another? Only Lu Shi, Lu Zhongqing, was a clear stream. Back then, when he was sent to Hu County, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that he had been ambushed and suffered a loss. Hu County was a large place, comparable to a prefecture. However, it was a place with barren mountains and unruly rivers. The people were tough, and there were bandits and squires. There were years of floods and natural and man-made disasters. Before Lu Shi, 9 county governors had died in such a place. They had thought that Lu Shi would be the 10th unlucky one. Who would have thought that he would have the ability to turn the world upside down? Even though Hu County was still a county, it was as prosperous as the other rich prefectures in Dongqing. The food it produced had alleviated the disasters in the 2 neighboring prefectures and stabilized Dongqing's decline. Who in the court dared to say that they did not know about Lu Shi? Jiang Pingji did not know that her strange father was so cunning. She had another problem on her mind. Could anyone come here and pull Shangguan Wan away from this sticky candy? She kept saying that Brother Lanting did not care about Wan, and she kept saying that Brother Lanting did not love Wan. She made it sound as if she had committed a heinous crime. Then what do you want? Jiang Pingji felt that she was stupid. Why did she come here? She might as well choke Feng Jin to death. Teach Wan how to ride a horse. I want a big horse, not a pony. Wan pouted as she begged. Her braids swayed back and forth. You're so hard to please. How are you going to ride a horse with that outfit? Jiang Pingji face-bombed, but she accepted Shangguan Wan's kindness. Despite her young age, she was a smart girl. At her age, it was still too early for her to come to this gathering, but she had come with Lu Lanting's best interests in mind. Shangguan Wan had probably seen through the Weiss plans and was trying to get back at her in front of everyone. I knew that Brother Lanting would say that. I'm prepared. She squinted her eyes slyly as she spoke. Fine, I'll give it to her. Jiang Pingji had no choice but to turn around and ask Wei Jingxian, whose face was filled with guilt and embarrassment. Jing? Do you want to go? Wei Jingxian's exquisitely made-up face turned pale. She shook her head. Shangguan Wan walked in front. She had changed her outfit for the day to make it suitable for riding a horse. Brother Lanting, don't blame Sister Jingxian. She only found out about today's incident last night. Pulling Lu Lanting's horse, the 2 of them walked to a place where the crowd could see but not hear. Why would I blame her? The Wei residence's invitations secretly contained her flower note, and there's a code in it. Come, let's give it a try. Jiang Pingji stood on her tiptoes and stroked the horse's neck. On the surface, she was trying to soothe the horse's anxiety at meeting a stranger, but in reality, she was using her aura to suppress it. It had dared to kick its hooves before, but now, it would not dare to throw a tantrum. Both Lu Lanting and Shangguan were little children, but the horse was a pure-blooded northern borderline stallion. Its height alone was several heads taller than the two of them. But now, the legendary wild horse was as obedient as a lamb. "It's too high. I can't get up." Shangguan tried a few times, but she could not even step into the stirrup. Her face scrunched up. Jiang Pengji did not carry her up, so she gave the horse a look and used a mental hint. Then, Shangguan saw that Jiang Pengji patted the horse's body, and the horse obediently lowered its body. "You're so smart." Jiang Pengji smiled as she held the reins. Shangguan nervously grabbed the saddle. "You can get up now." Chapter 65. He lovingly stroked the neck of the white horse and imitated Jiang Pengji's previous actions to comfort the horse. Speaking of which, the horse was quite pitiful. It was a northern warhorse with pure white fur and no other colors. She had spent a lot of effort to get it back. However, it followed a lousy master and became a horse to pull a carriage. It almost became a common horse. Shangguan sighed. "But I think Sister Jingxian and Brother Lanting are really a good match. It was wrong to enter the path of decay at such a young age." The corner of Jiang Pengji's eye twitched. "You're playing dumb again. Brother Lanting died young. Sister Lanting is in front of you." Shangguan teased. "If I call you sister in front of others, would you dare to agree?" At that moment, Jiang Pengji realized that the style of the bullet screen had changed again, and it was a meme she could not understand at all. "Badeo President? Wild monkey, do you dare to answer me if I call you?" "Lan Chuayu Buja. Wild monkey, do you dare to answer me when I call you?" "Cafeteria Daffinanti. Stupid monkey, do you dare to answer me when I call you?" The screen was full of ruffians. Jiang Pengji was stunned. How bored were the audience? Other than duplication, what else can you do? She crossed her arms in front of her chest and lifted her eyelids, looking like a scoundrel. "I really don't dare to agree." With the help of the horse's height, Shangguan saw that the elegant gathering seemed to have changed its activity. Are they going to play archery and pitch-pot? They're just a bunch of useless chickens. What's there to look at? Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes and did not hide her disdain. Shangguan nodded seriously. "That's true. Brother Lanting is the most heroic and extraordinary. Wanner still wants to walk 2 laps. Seeing that she was going to lead the horse back, Shangguan somewhat shamelessly hugged the horse's neck, looking like she was unwilling to get down. "You've become a demon," Jiang Pengji muttered. She had just had this thought. Although the restrictions on women were not too strict now, and they could go shopping or participate in poetry gatherings if they were accompanied, some things could not be done as they pleased. Shangguan was young, so there were more restrictions. Even if she wanted to ride a horse, she could only ride a pony. Now that he was riding on the back of such a tall horse, he only felt that the surrounding air was fresh. Humming a nursery rhyme, the light and cheerful tune made people feel relaxed and happy. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, had no idea that her appointed accountant had caused some trouble for her. He had embarrassed a few noble sons. "Lang Jun, please take a look." Su could put down his brush. There was a piece of paper on the table. The handwriting on it was thin and powerful, but it was hard to hide its sharpness. Although he was an idiot, he still had some self-restraint. He couldn't do something as uncultured as insulting him. Feng Jin, who was watching the series of events, looked at Su Ku, who had a humble face but a strong aura. He then looked at the figure who was strolling with a big horse in the distance, who was as small as an ant. He silently took a sip of tea. It was better for him to silently be an audience drinking tea. How did things develop to such a state of mutual hostility? It all started when Shangguan pestered Jiang Pengji to walk the horse. It was not convenient for Su Ku and Takshu to follow her, so they stayed at the assembly. It seemed that some of the guests had been informed of the true purpose of the assembly by their family elders, and they were waiting to watch a good show. He thought that he would see the other party fuming with anger and embarrassment, but he didn't expect that she wouldn't care about others at all. When they asked her to play poetry, she shamelessly admitted that she was not good at it. When they asked her for other activities, she just looked at them with a dispirited and bored expression. They did not want to continue pestering her, and naturally, they could not watch the good show that they had been waiting for. With such an impenetrable face, they really couldn't do anything to the other party. Then, when they looked away, she brought the daughter of the Shangguan family to walk the horse. The monk could run, but the temple could not to mention that her manservant and servant girl were still there. Lang Jun, who had been unintentionally choked by Jiang Pingji, mocked her in a low voice. His words were vague, but those who knew understood. Su Ku was not one of them, but he was smart. When he heard those words, he felt that it was not right. Then, someone mocked Jiang Pingji for not knowing literature and had failed to live up to Lu Shi's reputation. How could a noble family produce an illiterate? It would have been fine if that was all, but they felt that it was not enough, so they took it out on Su Ku. They could not humiliate the master, but it was the same to humiliate the servant. Takshu was a servant girl. Although Jiang Pingji had called them idiots, they had always been good at pretending, so Takshu would not be implicated. So, they were slapped in the face. That was how it happened. They challenged Su Ku to discuss poetry, but each time they competed, they were slapped in the face, and it hurt more than the last. Feng Jin could not bear to look at it, so he turned his face away. He did not dare to look at the tragic scene. Su Ku was not born in a good family. It was difficult for an ordinary family to study. The cheapest book in the bookstore was half a year for an ordinary family. Studying was expensive, and it was not easy for Su Ku to win if he did not use tricks. On the other hand, poetry was valuable because of its spirituality, which Su Ku did not lack. If it was an examination on strategy or holy words, he would probably be in trouble. But the reality was that a group of mediocre idiots wanted to show off, but they happened to run into Su Ku's strong point and were forced to be taught a lesson. Feng Jin smiled. As expected, it is not wise to attack the enemy's strong point with one's weak point. Su Ku glanced at him discreetly. He maintained a calm expression on his face, but in his heart he felt a little guilty. On the other side, Wuma Jun smiled and tried to smooth things over, but his bias was very obvious. Lang Jun, why bother with a lowly servant? It was just a coincidence. Su Ku's eyes darkened, and he quietly clenched his fists. But he could not continue to be competitive in this situation. Otherwise, he would be humiliated and beaten to death, and no one would say anything. So what if he was talented? His identity could crush people to death. Seeing that Su Ku was about to lose, Feng Jin smiled and suggested, governing a country and family is not something that can be solved with 1 or 2 poems. Lang Jun, why do you care so much? It's okay to lose by 1.5 foot. It's just to kill time. Now that spring is just right, talking about poems is too boring. What do you guys think about horse racing and throwing pots? The fish are fat, and fishing by the river is also fun. Feng Jin gently said to Su Ku, go down and ask Lanting if he is interested in playing. Wuma Jun turned his head and looked at Feng Jin with an inexplicable expression. Wait! Just when Feng Jin was about to relax, he heard his Lang Jun, who was dressed in pink, suggest with a smile, this Lang Jun is right. It's just that. I guess you guys have played with ordinary throwing pots and shooting arrows too many times and are tired of it. Why don't we try something new? I heard that the people of the northern borderline are tough. They often make the slaves have something on their heads and use it as a target. Hearing this, Feng Jin suddenly clenched his fists in his sleeves and warned, oh? It's just to kill time. Why don't we let him try? Chapter 66. Wuma Jun did not want to offend either side, so he chose to be neutral. Feng Jin was furious. The Lang Jun took a strange fruit from the table. It was slightly bigger than an adult's fist. Su Ku's eyes widened. He held the fruit in his hands, not expecting things to turn out this way. Feng Jin put down his gentle facade and said coldly, there are women here. If I miss, won't I be disturbing them? The Lang Jun was aggressive. Etiquette, music, archery, strategy, mathematics, and calligraphy are the 6 skills of a gentleman. They are the foundation of a gentleman's life. They are the key to righteousness, cultivation, family, governance, and peace. All of us here have been learning since young How could we not be able to control such a small arrow? After that he smiled again. He was young, but the corners of his mouth were curled up in a sinister smile. Thinking of Jiang Pingji's judgment of the man in pink, Feng Jin could not help but admire her ability to judge people. He secretly took a deep breath and maintained a calm expression on his face. Lang Jun, have you forgotten that this is Lanting's page boy, a servant of the Lu residence? How can you deal with her people without authorization? This is not what a gentleman should do. Please reconsider. Lu Lanting had slaughtered a bunch of bandits. How could he be a good person? Rather than saying that he was protecting Su Ku, it was more accurate to say that he was preventing a farce from happening. Moreover, he could not understand why someone would want to cause trouble for Lu Lanting at this juncture. Did they not know that Lu Lanting's father was the general evaluation officer and could decide the future of many young scholars with one word? The Lang Jun snorted. If anything happens to this lowly servant, I'll just compensate Lu Lanting 10 times. Bring me the bow and arrows. Lu Lanting comes from a scholarly family. His upbringing is strict. He won't ask for justice for a lowly servant. Su Ku's face was originally filled with anger, but now he was so angry that his hands were trembling. These people did not know about the people's livelihood and only knew how to enjoy themselves. They had no regard for human life. They were young, but they were ruthless. The Lang Jun heard the Longjuan's proud voice. The limit is 50 steps. Tell him to stand still. Remember not to tremble. Otherwise, he'll miss. There were a lot of servants guarding the assembly, and a layer of white cloth was wrapped around the assembly to block the wind and the prying eyes of others. Wei Jingxian heard the commotion next door. Puzzled, she called a maid over to ask what was going on. Wan Xiu sat to the side and frowned. It's a gathering today. Why is this happening instead of talking about poetry? The noblewoman who did not know the truth chuckled. I heard that Jing Lang Jun has been interested in Jingxian for a long time. If Wei Jingxian had been teased like this before, she would have glared at her angrily. But now, for some reason, she was a little absent-minded. Wan Xiu nudged her a few times before she came back to her senses. She looked absent-minded. Wan Xiu's dissatisfaction. Even if he is jealous, he should not humiliate him like this. It was one thing to lose to Zheng Langjun in poetry, but now he was humiliated and attacked him. His behavior was unsightly. After thinking for a while, she summoned her maidservant and whispered a few words to her, telling Lu Lanting to clean up the mess herself. Wei Jingxian looked at Wan Xiu with gratitude, which made Wan Xiu feel strange. Wan Xiu could not help but frown at the strange atmosphere in the gathering. Elsewhere, Jiang Pingji was still holding the reins and walking the horse. A group of spectators inexplicably started to address her as eldest senior brother and Shangguan Wan as the lowly version of her master. She had no idea what she had done to provoke these people. She felt like a group of lunatics getting high on themselves. The generation gap was indeed insurmountable. What is it now? Jiang Pingji looked up. Does this little girl still want to walk the horse? Her wooden clogs were about to be worn out by the pebbles. Shangguan Wan was uncertain. Brother Lanting, there seems to be someone running over here and waving at me. Waving? Jiang Pingji frowned. She was displeased. Let me see, she said to Shangguan Wan. She leaped onto the horse's back, which scared Shangguan Wan so much that she almost screamed. Hold on to the rope. The white horse, which had been walking quietly, suddenly raised its hooves and galloped away. What's the matter? Jiang Pengji controlled the reins and the horse stopped precisely in front of the strange maid. The maid bowed and saluted, then said, This servant's wife ordered this servant to inform Lang Jun to return quickly. Who knows what happened? Jiang Pengji muttered. Jiang Pengji mumbled. At that moment, Shangguan Wan, who was in Jiang Pengji's arms, looked around. She made a sound of surprise and pointed at an empty space in the assembly. Brother Lanting, look over there. Why does the target look like a person? Target? Like a person? Jiang Pengji frowned and looked in the direction Shangguan Wan was pointing. Shangguan Wan did not see the expression on Jiang Pengji's face. She waited for a long time but did not hear a response. Brother Lanting? After a long time, A slightly evil voice came from behind. "Wang, do you want to play archery?" Jiang Pengji curled her lips and a hint of anger flashed in her eyes. Was he trying to bully me? Without waiting for Shang Wanwan's reply, Jiang Pengji took the bow and arrow from the horse's back. "Hold on to the reins." As she spoke, she tightened her legs around the horse's belly. The originally docile white horse suddenly quivered and galloped toward the assembly. Jiang Pengji calmly took out an arrow from the quiver and drew the bow to a full moon. One had to know that this bow was a strong bow that weighed 1 stone. In this era, 1 stone was equivalent to 50 kilograms. Some adult men might be able to easily draw a bow that weighed 1 stone, but for a 12-year-old boy or girl to do it, it was a bit scary. Su Ku suppressed the rising anger in his heart and placed the kiwi fruit on his head. 50 steps away, the Langjun in a pink robe was still smiling. He took the bow and arrow from his servant and weighed it in his hand. He was slightly satisfied. It was a bow that he usually practiced with. It required half a pickle of strength to draw it to a full moon. Feng Jin, who was standing at the side, saw that he had really drawn his bow and was obviously aiming for Su Ku's heart. Anger rose in his heart. He stepped forward and grabbed Su Ku's hand that was holding the bow. At the same time, a long arrow pierced through the air, bringing with it a wind blade that scratched his cheek. In a split second, when everyone was stunned, the Longjuan's neatly combed hair was blown away by the arrow, and his black hair scattered. Thud, half of the arrow sank into the trunk of a pear tree. The exposed arrowhead trembled for a long time before it stopped. "Who gave you the right to touch my people?" Chapter 67. The audience in the streaming room was in an uproar. Anjing Zhuang, awesome, streamer. Qin Shi Huang, Mom, it's her. She flirted with me through the screen, but she didn't come to marry me QAQ. It was a toxic streaming room, from the content to the audience. Fortunately, Jiang Pengji wasn't affected by it. The horse's hooves clattered, and a flash of white galloped over the wall of guards. It landed precisely in front of the Langjun in pink. The horse stomped on the ground with its hooves impatiently. It puffed out hot air, turned its head, and pounced on the Longjuan's face. The horse stomped on the ground with its hooves in annoyance. It puffed out hot air, turned its head, and pounced on the Longjuan's face. When he saw who it was, he realized it was Jiang Pengji. Her face was still full of anger. The Langjun raised his hand to touch his hair. His scalp hurt, and his face darkened. He waved his sleeves angrily, gritted his teeth, and asked, "Lu Shi, are you trying to kill someone?" "Kill someone?" Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes. She held the bow in one hand and held Shangguan Wan in the other. She sneered. "That's not right. Why would I kill my own kind? I only saw that you didn't ask or tell me, and you humiliated me. If that's the case, it's impolite not to reciprocate." Riding on the horse, Jiang Pengji could completely look down on the Langjun in pink, who looked too gentle. She was rebellious, and her aura was fierce and oppressive. For a moment, no one dared to look up at her. If it wasn't for the strange atmosphere, Feng Jin would have laughed out loud. What did she mean by she wouldn't kill her own kind? In other words, wasn't she scolding others for not being human? Feng Jin heaved a sigh of relief. He released the Longjuan's hand and came out to smooth things over. He couldn't let her make things worse. However, Jiang Pengji obviously didn't want to accept his kindness. She jumped off the horse and patted its body. The horse walked leisurely and elegantly to the side. Shangguan Wan finally came back to her senses. Her face was still flushed with excitement. "Zheng, I remember you're going to participate in the assessment this year, right?" Jiang Pengji pulled out an arrow from her quiver. She held the arrow with one hand and pointed the sharp arrowhead steadily at the Longjuan's delicate face. "What do you think will happen if I draw the arrow?" Jiang Pengji asked. "What do you think will happen?" Everyone's expression changed drastically. Was this a sign that they were preparing to make a move? On the other hand, compared to the tense atmosphere in the stadium, the viewers in the live stream seemed to be more relaxed and eager to learn. Pretty girl warrior N. What the hell is a zero? Sorcerer girl a phone. It's similar to our ancient imperial examination system. I feel like the two have similar meanings. Very pretty girl. Why do I get so excited when I see the streamer about to bully the teenagers? Bully? Abuse? She was overthinking things. She just wanted to threaten him to disfigure his face. Feng Jin's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't dare to stop her at this time. He was afraid that she would ruin his face with a shake of her hand. Dongqing's officialdom was inherited from the previous dynasty, the Xia kingdom. There were as many rules as there were hairs on a cow. There were thousands of them, but the more famous ones were those who were born as slaves, those who were physically unfit, those who were disfigured, and those who were unfilial were not allowed to become officials. You dare to do this? Zheng Bin's face turned pale. He took 2 steps back. His cowardly behavior made him even angrier. Why don't you try and you'll know if I dare or not? Jiang Pingji's eyes were cold. Zheng Bin took a step back, and she took a step forward. Compared to Zheng Bin's weak steps, Jiang Pingji was firm and decisive. If you fight me fair and square, then you're still a man. But you humiliate my page boy when I'm not here and use such despicable methods. You're really regressing. Zheng Bin could almost feel the coldness of the arrow on his cheek. He swallowed nervously. His eyeballs kept rolling down, afraid that Jiang Pingji would accidentally cut his face. The assessment was imminent. If he couldn't participate because of the injury on his face, wouldn't he feel wronged? Lu Shi, what do you want? Zheng Bin was annoyed and annoyed. He didn't know when Lu Shi, who everyone could bully, had become so troublesome. You like to practice archery on people's heads, don't you? Jiang Pingji suddenly raised a smile. Everyone had a bad feeling. Coincidentally, I like it too. You should have brought your page boy with you to the assembly today, right? We'll call it even. But to prevent people from criticizing me and thinking that I, Lu Shi, deliberately hurt people, I might as well change the rules. Feng Jin saw that she was going overboard. He couldn't help but say in a low voice, Lanting, he's going crazy. Don't you want your future? If today's incident spread to the assembly, she would be infamous for being cruel. I'm not crazy. 3 arrows per person. The first arrow will be 50 steps, the second 70 steps, and the third 100 steps. The target will be the fruit. What do you think? Jiang Pingji didn't even turn her head. Her lips were still curled up in a chilling smile. Her hand that was holding the arrow didn't even tremble in the slightest. Without waiting for Zheng Bin's reply, she shouted, Su Ku, hold the fruit and stand still. Su Ku thought he could escape from the fate of being a human target. He didn't expect that it would be his Lang Jun who spoke. But he didn't hesitate for long. He put the fruit on his head and stood 50 steps away. Su Ku hadn't even seen when Jiang Pingji pulled the bow and shot the arrow. There was a muffled sound of the fruit piercing through his head. The exploding juice almost drenched his head. Before he could react to what had happened, he heard the capricious Longjuan's voice again. 70 steps. Su Ku was speechless. Damn it, when did she aim just now? Because of this, Su Ku became bolder. He took a new fruit from the handmaiden and stood still after measuring 70 steps in front of everyone. Then, he shot another arrow and accurately hit the fruit on top of his head. He really underestimated his Longjuan's archery. 100 steps. Keep going. The distance of 100 steps was too small for an ordinary person's eyesight. More importantly, the light bow that was usually used for practice couldn't shoot that far. If the wind impeded the arrow, it was possible that the arrow would fall to the ground. But it wasn't a problem for Jiang Pingji. She could accurately aim even with her eyes closed. As for the bow, the one in her hand was already considered a heavy bow. As for the legendary person who could draw a 3-pickle bow, she could do it too if she had enough time. Feng Jin was obviously aware of these details. He looked a little worried. What do these people think the assembly is? If they want to win, they should go somewhere else. They don't want to spoil the fun. But why do I feel that Lu Shi is getting bolder? Some noble ladies who didn't know the truth thought Lu Shi was still the shy and introverted boy he used to be. Wan Xiu was older, and she looked more mature and steady. She wiped the tea stains from the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief and said with a faint smile, She's bold because she's skilled. It's obvious that she wants to step on Zheng Bin and humiliate him. Jingxian, don't you think so? Chapter 68. Wei Jingxian was not in the mood, but out of politeness, she had to respond to Wan Xiu. She could shoot a fruit from 100 paces away with such a loose bow. Zheng Langjun is going to be at a disadvantage, Wei Jingxian said. Wei Jingxian chimed in, if she loses, she won't be able to get anything out of it. But if she wins beautifully, who would care about the whole story? They will only remember that Lu Lanting is good at archery and can shoot a fruit from 100 paces away. What she said was Jiang Pingji's plan. If you dare to humiliate me, I will step on you to regain my lost face. Following his usual cool style, the last arrow was clean and tidy. In the blink of an eye, the third kiwi fruit was shot down, right in the middle. The surroundings were silent and shocked. Even Feng Jin's eyes flickered with surprise. Your bow. Feng Jin took the bow from Jiang Pingji's hands. He knew the bow was extraordinary the moment he touched it. He tried to draw it, and the weight was beyond his expectations. Then he turned his head to look at his friend. It's at least 1 stone, right? Yes, it is 1 stone, but it's still a little light. I haven't used it for a long time, and it feels a little uncomfortable when I draw it to a full moon. Jiang Pingji thought Feng Jin must be thinking like this. Feng Jin, I want to be quiet. 1 stone? Even many men could not draw it to a full moon. Not to mention, Jiang Pingji was so relaxed and content just now. From the beginning to the end, not a single drop of sweat appeared on his forehead. The viewers in the live streaming room were confused. Was a bow of 1 stone that awesome? Zai Tiguanyan, I don't understand, but I have to pretend that I understand and think the streamer is awesome _ smiley face 3, angle _ Misha Warrioring. Can someone with good history tell me what the unit of measurement is 1 stone? Yusubi Sangwashan, #haughty smile. Depending on the era of history, 1 is about 30 to 60 kilograms. I'm not sure about the host's world, but looking at the young man's expression, I think it's beyond the range of a normal 12-year-old. The audience was discussing how many kilograms the stone was equivalent to, but Jiang Pingji had long developed the habit of ignoring the livestream screen. She didn't forget her goal this time. She smiled at Zhengbin naturally and said, Now, it's your turn. Now, Zhengbin was in a difficult position. If he didn't agree, the humiliation he would suffer would be far greater than when he had bullied Su Ku. He had bullied Lu Lanting's servant to vent his anger, but Lu Lanting had slapped him in the face to vent her anger. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he ignored the pleading eyes of the attendant beside him and sternly scolded him to carry the fruit 50 steps away. Compared to Su Ku's calmness, Zhengbin's servant seemed to have stage fright. His legs were trembling, and the kiwi fruit on his head was on the verge of falling. When he saw Zhengbin raise his bow, his legs turned to jelly and he fell to the ground. His clothes slowly became wet. Oh, he was so scared that he peed his pants? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and whistled like a hooligan. She flashed her pearly white teeth at the livid Zhengbin. Boring. I'm not playing anymore. Zhong Wenyuan, let's add a voice to the streamer's thoughts. Hey, it feels so exciting to run away after acting cool. Jiang Pingji, Zhengbin. After she finished speaking, Su Ku and Takshu stood by their sides. The big white horse proudly followed its master's footsteps. Zhengbin took a long time to regain his composure. He angrily threw the bow in his hand to the ground and gritted his teeth. Brute. Feng Jin looked up at the sky and the ground, but he did not look at Zhengbin. How could he say that Lu Lanting was a girl? Wuma Jun was dumbfounded. After a while he said, That's weird. How did Lu Zhongqing raise such an unrestrained Lang Jun? How was he a gentleman? He was clearly a playboy. There are a lot of young and frivolous people nowadays. When she's older, she'll naturally change. Feng Jin's words had easily settled the matter. Although Lu Shi was unrestrained and unrestrained, this was also a kind of fashion, okay? In Shangyang City, the capital of Dongqing, this kind of craziness was very popular. Some Langjuns from the aristocratic families would even take off their clothes and run around in the wild. In comparison, Lu Lanting's behavior was very conservative and well-behaved. Sheng Wanwan had seen everything clearly from her horse. She did not like Zhengbin, and the scene just now was very satisfying. I didn't know that Brother Lanting had such a vengeful side. Shangguanwan could not climb down, so she let the white horse follow Jiang Pingji's footsteps. Vengeful? That's not right. Your Brother Lanting is an upright person. He doesn't hold grudges. Jiang Pingji said with a smile. To others, her words sounded extremely shameless. She was trying to put gold on her face. Unexpectedly, she added, because I always take revenge on the spot. Why would I need to remember it after the event? Jiang Pingji smiled and said. She helped Shangguanwan down from the horse. Help me tell Jingxian that none of the men here today are suitable for her. Wei Jingxian's family background was not low, so there was no need for her to put herself at a disadvantage when it came to marriage. As long as the conditions were met, she had the right to slowly choose. For women in ancient times, marriage was a lifelong thing, so they naturally had to be very careful. I understand. Shangguanwan reluctantly returned to the circle of noble ladies. I'll tell Sister Jingxian in private. The matter had not been exposed yet, so it was covered with a veil. Shangguanwan was young, but she was very clever. Jiang Pingji only had time to deal with Su Ku after the matter was settled. Her tone was not pleasant, and it was hard to tell whether she was happy or angry. I'll tell you when we get back. On the other hand, Wu Majun was curious about Jiang Pingji. He looked at Jiang Pingji with a burning gaze. Although he's frivolous, he's a promising young man. Why don't you introduce him to me? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows when she saw Feng Jin bring someone over. Brother? Feng Jin's fair face blushed. He had seen Jiang Pingji's flippant side, so he was not naive enough to think that Jiang Pingji was a good brother. Lanting, don't be silly. Have you forgotten about him? Didn't you see him in the bandit's lair? Bandit's lair? When did that happen? Uma Jun was at a loss. The corners of Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a smile. Oh, now that you mention it, I have some impression. Uma Jun's eyelids twitched. He did not know what they were talking about. Just. Fourth Langjun had a high fever and was in a coma. If you did not take him in, I'm afraid. Feng Jin's attitude was relaxed, as if he was talking about family matters. I wanted to introduce you two to each other, but I didn't expect things to be so busy that it took until now. Uma Jun's face froze. Did he just get a savior? Chapter 69. However, one more savior is one more person. I can use this relationship to get to know Lu Zhongqing. I see. It was too dark at that time, so I didn't remember. Is he completely recovered from his cold now? Jiang Pingji's expression softened. There was no trace of joy. Uma Jun cupped his hands and thanked her. Since then he's almost recovered. If you don't mind, Lu Langjun can call me Zhengzi. No matter how ignorant Jiang Pingji was, she knew that in ancient times, only family members, teachers, and close friends could call each other by their courtesy names. She was so enthusiastic right from the start. It seemed like she had ulterior motives. Because of her temperament, she was not very patient to pretend to be courteous with others. Fortunately, there was Feng Jin by her side who could mediate between them, so the conversation was not that uncomfortable. Putting aside some personal reasons, Wuma Jun's temperament was actually quite to her liking. As he spoke, Wuma Jun could not help but mention what had happened just now. That Jing Langjun is not a kind person. You embarrassed him just now. Be careful that he will hold a grudge against you in the future and cause you trouble. It's better to avoid trouble. Lanting can completely suppress this matter just now. Jiang Pingji smiled disdainfully. I have something on him. If he holds a grudge, then so be it. I'm not afraid of him. Wuma Jun was speechless. Didn't they say there will be an evaluation recently? If his reputation is tarnished or something happens to him, he might not be able to enter officialdom for the rest of his life. Love go, small, shui, net ku instead of hiding his foxtail, he came out to ask for a beating. There's no need to worry about this kind of brain. Hearing her words, Wuma Jun could not help but feel suspicious. Did she really have something on Zheng Bin? The gathering ended on a sour note. Zheng Bin, who had suffered a great loss, waved his sleeves and left in a rage. The other Langjuns did not show off their talents or try to please the noble ladies. They were all absent-minded. After the gathering ended, Wei Jingxian twisted her handkerchief uneasily. She bit her red lips and asked, "Did she really say that?" Sheng Wanwan giggled. Wan said that Brother Lanting isn't a reckless and unreasonable person. He treats Sister Jingxian so well, so he naturally hopes that you can find a good husband. The people at today's assembly, the birds and beasts in human clothing, they are all not good people. Wei Jingxian sighed while her beautiful brows knit together slightly and she grumbled. If she was a man, then there wouldn't be so many problems. Previously, when he escaped from the bandits' lair and returned home, although his reputation was preserved, his parents still repeatedly questioned him, fearing that he had missed something and would be brought up again in the future. She couldn't help but ask her mother about Lu Shi's womanhood. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that his parents were insiders. Back then, the Lu residents had even come to return the token. It was only out of consideration for her reputation that they had delayed it to this day. As for today's gathering, Wei Jingxian had also expressed her opposition. After all, she and Lu Shi hadn't officially broken off their engagement. Wouldn't this put the entire Lu residence on the spot? Unfortunately, her voice was too weak and her father had his own plans, so he didn't pay attention to her at all. Mrs. Wei's heart softened when she saw her daughter's sadness. She decided to reveal the truth to her daughter. "You don't have to worry about this anymore. Your father told the Lu residents beforehand. No matter how foolish he is, he wouldn't offend Lu Zhongqing at this time." Jiang Pingji had not yet returned home, but the news of what she had done at the gathering had already spread. Just as she had expected, everyone's attention was focused on her archery skills. As for her arrogant behavior, it became a harmless embellishment. Lu Shi was sitting upright. There was a piece of bamboo paper in front of the table. He glanced at it and realized that it was Lu Lanting's birth and 8 characters. "Did you have a good time at the gathering today?" A father's tone suggested that he was watching a good show. Jiang Pingji complained, "It was boring. A bunch of people had nothing to do, so they just sat there and mourned. Their good mood was ruined." Lu Shi almost burst out laughing. "Lanting, you're right. This kind of gathering is not a place where you can have fun. It's just that you were too reckless about Xingbin. Fortunately, my son's archery skills are superb. Otherwise, he would have been at a disadvantage." Jiang Pingji sat down at the table in front of Lu Shi and smiled nonchalantly. Could it be that the brat dragged his entire family here to complain to father? As the saying goes, when you hit the young, the old comes. Could Xingbin have gone to his parents for help because he could not beat her? If he did, I would have thrown them out. Plus, they don't have the guts to come looking for trouble. Lu Shi shook his head. In fact, that was not what he was concerned about. "I just want to tell you that it's easy to make enemies by humiliating people. If you don't have the confidence to kill them, you should learn to leave them some leeway. Leave them some leeway in life." It sounded like he was advising Jiang Pingji not to be so cruel in the future, but that was not what he meant. The premise of leaving them some leeway was that they did not have the confidence to kill them. If they did, they should be bold enough to make enemies. Lu Shi did not mind dealing with his daughter's aftermath. After all, he was good at it. But time waited for no man. He would grow old one day. Who would be able to help her then? She was still young and her temperament had not yet stabilized. Maybe she could turn things around. "Of course I have something on him," Jiang Pingji said gently. Jiang Pingji said gently, "I heard that Xingbin intends to enter the officialdom through the evaluation. However, the evaluation not only tests his filial piety, appearance, talent, and family background, but also his reputation. If his reputation is ruined, it will be difficult for him to recover." Lu Shi raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why do you say that?" "Xingbin looks like a decent person on the surface, but he has a penchant for flirting with women. He's also extremely violent. I bet he's beaten a lot of kids to death." Jiang Pingji smiled disdainfully. "It's not a big deal, but it's not a small one either. If Xingbin had already entered the government, his reputation would be ruined and he would be impeached a few times. But he hasn't entered the government yet, and the evaluation is very strict on his reputation." She did not finish her sentence. but it was good that she knew what she meant. Lu Shi asked a question that he was curious about. How do you know that Zheng Bin has that kind of hobby? Jiang Pingji answered, I can tell if I'm not blind. Lu Shi rested his forehead on his hand. His eyes fell on the paper on the table. He suddenly asked, if that's the case, what do you see now? Father, you have the smell of incense burning on your body. I've only smelled it at Shangfu Temple because there's a special herb added to it. The clothes I'm wearing are from yesterday. Even though they're very clean, the corners of the clothes have traces of being wet and dried by the night dew. Did you go to Shangfu Temple last night to find Master Liaochen to settle the marriage between me and Jing? Chapter 70. Lu Shi listened quietly with a calm expression. It seemed that he had been mentally prepared for this situation. That's all right. What's next? Based on my speculation, it's just a trick. For example, Master Liaochen will tell me that I can't get married in the next few years, or else I'll be killed. Or maybe I'll say that I don't want to waste Jinger's time and ask the ways to cancel the marriage. Jiang Pingji used the knowledge she had from the ancient times. It was the safest way. In the ancient times, men could marry at a later age, but according to Dongqing's laws, if a woman did not marry at the age of 18, her family would have to pay double the tax. It was naturally impossible for the Wei clan to not be able to pay such a tax, but their reputation would be too bad and it would be very embarrassing. Lu Lanting could afford it, but Wei Jingxian could not. Master Liaochen was a capable man, and he had a high reputation among the nobles in Hejian County. He was a monk, and he never lied. The superstitious and ignorant people of the ancient times would believe his words. After all, they believed in ghosts and gods. Lu Shi listened carefully and said helplessly, that's about it. There's not much of a discrepancy. But you have to know that I'm your father, and I won't guard against you. But what if someone knows about your ability and sets a trap for you? His daughter was smarter, more confident, and more conceited than he had imagined. Conceited people often suffered. Jiang Pingji's eyes were bright, as if there were two clusters of fire burning in them. A one-sided suppression is too boring. Only an exchange of blows can make one's blood boil with excitement. Lu Shi was speechless. He did not expect Jiang Pingji to give him such an answer, but it was a reasonable one. What if one day I'm at a disadvantage? Jiang Pingji smiled. I'm looking forward to it. I'll think about it for the rest of my life. Lu Shi smiled bitterly. I've always wondered why Master Liaochen was so sure that you would become a sovereign in the future. After all, most women in the world are weak and gentle. But now that I think about it, it's not impossible. His daughter was even more manly than a man. Her style was completely different from the rest of the family. Jiang Pingji said, it's better to spread the news of Master Liaochen's fortune-telling as soon as possible. I'm afraid that others will maliciously harm Jing. Lu Shi raised his eyelids, and there was an indescribable look in his eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that he was sure that the one who died that year was the second son of the first wife, he would have suspected that the one in front of him was the son based on what she had just said. You sure have tender feelings for the fairer sex. She openly admitted, being protective of the fairer sex is a virtue, and Jing deserves to be treated well. In a situation where there was no conflict, she had a high tolerance for women, especially beautiful and outstanding women. She had a high tolerance for them. Lu Shi was speechless. It was a pity that he wasn't a son. If that's what you're thinking, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Lu Shi said coldly, Madame Wei has other plans. Moreover, when a woman marries, her family background and her husband's appearance and talent are the most important criteria. As long as she doesn't marry into a lower class and humiliate her family, who cares about how she lives after marriage? There were too many aristocratic ladies who treated their husbands with respect as ice after they got married. The fresh and tender flowers gradually withered in the back of the house. It was because of this that Lu Shi had the audacity to let the daughter of the first wife pretend to be the son of the first wife under the pleading of his late wife. Even after so many years had passed, he still couldn't forget the scene of his wife holding their drowned son as she sat paralyzed by the pond in the courtyard. Her eyes were filled with desolation, as if she had lost her soul and had no attachment to this world. However, her eyes were filled with deep hatred. How could she not hate? Jiang Pengji frowned and asked in a low voice, "Which family does Madame Wei have her eyes on?" Lu Shi asked in reply, "At today's gathering. Can you guess who it is?" Let her guess? Her guesses were all based on a certain amount of information. If she guessed based on such little information, it was very likely that she would be wrong. However, since Lu Shi had set the scope to that day's gathering, in an instant, all the Langjuns flashed through her mind one by one. Is it Wuma Jun? After a while, Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows and said with certainty, "But he is not a good candidate." Compared to Wuma Jun, it was better to choose Feng Jin. At least Feng Jin was a genuine genius. Not to mention other things, he was a true gentleman. Even if they could not be affectionate after marriage, he would definitely give his wife the respect and understanding she deserved. At least such a man would not pretend that he did not see it and let other women bully his wife. Wuma Jun was different. In other words, his heart was higher than the sky, but his life was fragile. Give Wei Jingxian to him? Ha! Lu Shi paused and said, "Wuma Jun is the fourth son of the emperor. Although he is not favored by the emperor, he is still a prince." Jiang Pingji looked up lazily. She said with contempt, 2 or 3 generations ago, didn't they raise horses for the previous dynasty and live in the stables? It was not that she liked ginseng and rooster or was prejudiced. She had flipped through Lu Lanting's memories. In this era where the aristocratic families were powerful, people valued bloodlines more than anything else. The Wuma royal family had the throne, but their shallow foundation had always been looked down upon by the gentry. Just by looking at the situation in the emperor's harem, she could vaguely see some of it. The crown prince, or the eldest prince, was the son of the empress. The empress was not from a prominent family, but was the second legitimate daughter of a newly ascended aristocratic family. When the emperor married her, he was still Prince Gongshun of Hejian County. In everyone's eyes, the marriage was a good match. The second prince's mother was from a merchant family. In order to please Prince Gongshun, his parents sent her to the palace to be a servant. She also worked hard. Using her pregnancy and gentleness, she slowly won over Prince Gongshun's heart and made him indulge in her gentleness. Taking advantage of the fact that the novelty had not passed, she desperately got pregnant. She was lucky enough to have a boy in one fell swoop and gave birth to the second prince. She succeeded because of her son. When Prince Gongshun ascended to the throne, she became one of the 3 wives, Lady Hongda. The third prince was not the crown prince, but he had the highest status among all the princes. His mother came from the Feng family. The Feng family was one of the top families in Dongqing. It had been around for hundreds of years and was still standing. There were many talented people in the family. Interestingly, although the third prince's mother came from the Feng family, she was not a direct descendant. She was the daughter of a concubine. She was only a daughter of a concubine, but the current emperor had put in a lot of effort to bring her into the palace. He even gave her the position of empress. He wanted to give the position of empress to the daughter of the Feng family, but they looked down on the corrupt royal family and only respected them on the surface. It was useless for the Wuma royal family to be angry. Instead, they had to appease the Feng family to prevent them from being dissatisfied. These aristocratic families had deep roots in the Central Plains. No one knew how much power they could unleash after 1,000 years. As for the fourth prince, his background was more mysterious. There was not much news about him. It was said that he was from the Wang family of Langya. However, no one believed it. Instead, they treated it as a joke. The second prince's background was the lowest, so the emperor treated him as an abandoned son for a marriage alliance with the royal family of the northern borderline. The fourth prince's situation was rather special, but an unfavored and feared prince still wanted to marry the daughter of the Wei family's direct line of descent. Chapter 71. If it was during the founding of the country, it might be possible. But now, if Jing marries Wuma Jun, she will be laughed at. People will say that she gave up her pride to pursue wealth. Unless Wuma Jun's mother has an extraordinary background. It was like the daughter of a noble family marrying the son of a nouveau riche for a generous betrothal gift. It was embarrassing. Wuma Jun's mother and your mother were known as the twin beauties of Langya when they were young. They were two famous talented women in Dongqing. Lu Shi's words indirectly confirmed Jiang Pingji's guess. The Wuma royal family and the Wei family are beneath them, but the Wang family of Langya is of a higher status. Jiang Pingji searched her mind. Rumor had it that the fourth prince's mother was from the Wang family of Langya. Was it true? Jiang Pingji didn't have much of an impression of the Wang family, but she vaguely knew that they had a similar status as the Feng family. The twin beauties of Langya? That means Wuma Jun's mother is also quite famous. She's almost as famous as my mother. But how did she get into the harem? In order to get a woman from the Feng family into the harem, the emperor even promised a concubine's daughter the position of Zhao Yi. A woman from the Wang family of Langya had a similar reputation as Gu Min. She must have a high status in the Wang family. How could she get into the harem? I'm not sure, but Wuma Jun is indeed a child of the Wang family. Among the four princes, he has the highest status. Lu Shi smiled meaningfully. Even though the crown prince is the crown prince, his mother's family isn't that powerful. The emperor is also wary of him. He hasn't even taught him much about politics. Do you think a crown prince like that is the heir to the throne? Well, there's no point in going around in circles. Dongqing is going to fall. What's the point of arguing about that? Lu Shi's words made Jiang Pingji's mind clear. Wuma Jun is the heir to the throne? If that was the case, it was not impossible for Wuma Jun to marry Wei Jingxian. Lu Shi shook his head. That's not the case. The emperor is really afraid of him. He has been trying to weaken the Wang family in recent years, but he's failed several times. Jiang Pingji was speechless. As a martial artist, she really couldn't understand the mind of a scholar. Noticing the faint smugness on Lu Shi's face, the corners of her mouth twitched uncontrollably. Please enlighten me, father. Think about it yourself. Lu Shi was in a good mood as he left behind the four words. Even his facial features seemed to be filled with joy. A comment from the audience in the streaming room suddenly appeared in Jiang Pingji's mind. It feels so exciting to run away after putting on an act. She stood rooted to the ground for a long time, trying hard to suppress her curiosity, and muttered, I'm not curious. The Wuma royal family was like a grasshopper at the end of autumn. Who knew how long they could last? Instead of wasting time thinking about their internal family conflicts, it was better to think about how to get Wei Jingxian out of it. Some of the viewers in the livestream room expressed that they did not understand her thoughts and even felt some reflexively disgust. She was too presumptuous. She felt that Wuma Jun was not a good husband, so he was not a good husband? Marriage was a matter between two people. Maybe Wei Jingxian and Wuma Jun were a good match? As an outsider, what was she worrying about? They were not her parents. What right did they have to say anything? Host V, didn't Monk Liaochen say that I will take the path of conquering the world in the future? The current situation is unstable. Who knows when it will be a complete mess? If that's the case, will the Dongqing royal family still exist? Do you think I will be merciful? The remnants of the previous dynasty had to be eliminated because the roots had to be removed. If Wei Jingxian really married Wuma Jun, wouldn't she become a young widow? I can't bear to see that happen. The audience. After a long time, some netizens finally could not help but say something. You can hit me if you don't agree, host. Maybe you are thinking too much. Jiang Pingji smiled without saying anything. She did not know if she was thinking too much, but she knew that according to the current situation, the world would be in chaos sooner or later. Others might not know, but Jiang Pingji knew herself very well. She, Jiang Pingji, was never a person who was content with her lot. During peaceful times, she could force herself to be obedient, but if the environment was chaotic, she did not mind stepping in and finding something for herself to do. Jiang Pingji seemed to have thought of something. She picked up the brush and wrote 2 words on the bamboo paper on the table. Even those who did not know calligraphy could see the viciousness and oppression in the 2 words. It was not that she had made much progress, but she had subconsciously integrated her emotions into the words. Jiang Pingji put down the brush and said with satisfaction, Su Ku, frame this and hang it in the study. Su Ke did not know Jiang Pengji well, and he could not figure out his Longjuan's temper. Therefore, he did not dare to offend her, lest he was punished. However, when he stepped forward to clean up the calligraphy, he could not help but be stunned. A murderous aura hit him in the face. Even though the words were not beautiful, the neat and tidy handwriting revealed its extraordinariness. He could not help but murmur. His face was a little confused. Causing trouble? The words in this era were similar to the ancient words in the world of the streaming room. However, after thousands of years of evolution, the words in the world of the streaming room had become simple. If the words were written properly, they might be able to guess a few words correctly. However, Jiang Pengji's handwriting was like dancing dragons and dancing phoenixes. The audience in the streaming room became illiterate. If Su Ke had not read it out, they would not have known what she had written. You can hit me if you don't agree. Damn, the streamer is crazy. Causing trouble? Cough cough cough. Whose trouble are you trying to cause? Are you stupid this year? Needless to say, it's definitely not that Xingbin. It's that Wuma Jun. One of them put his face forward for the streamer to hit, and after being hit once, he wants to be hit again. The other one wants to steal the streamer's wife. Men can't tolerate this. To do Feichio, every time the streamer acts like a tyrant, I can't help but think of a phrase. Xian, Tyrant Emperor card. This Chao do you? Have you forgotten that the streamer is a girl? Even if she wants to shake, it should be a delicate body shake. San Sha Sha. A girl with a big penis and the aura of a tyrant emperor. Poor Daoist, see your chrysanthemum poison. It's so boring. I really want to be pressed down on the ground by the streamer. Harder. Even though she had been with them for a few days, Jiang Pengji still could not understand the magical thinking and style of the audience in the streaming room. They were all poisonous. Jiang Pengji secretly poked the system and asked hesitantly, "Over there. Is it because the evolution of the human brain hasn't been completed?" What was so strange about the word, causing trouble? It had been the slogan of the 7th Legion for thousands of years, ever since it was established. The system looked like it had nothing to live for. Others are ginseng roosters. It's just that you don't understand their cuteness. Chapter 72. Hang up the words and kneel in the corridor for an hour. Think about what you did wrong. Just when Su Ke thought that the matter was over, Jiang Pengji suddenly added something that made him freeze. Su Ke held the paper with both hands. He was still angry, but his posture was very humble. Yes. Takshu, who was at the side, did not seem surprised when she saw that. Su Ke's performance at the assembly was outstanding. He had beaten up the gentry nobles, but what was the point? Take this as a lesson. Next time, don't be arrogant and cause trouble for Lang Jun. Takshu walked to Su Ke's side after leaving the study. She raised her eyebrows and looked serious. Any of the nobles at the assembly could have easily killed you. Su Ke pursed his lips and lowered his voice. They were after Lang Jun, but they were not as good as you. Takshu frowned and refuted him coldly. What you did before was to protect Lang Jun from being humiliated or to show off. You and I both know it. Do you still need to quibble? There are many ways to protect Lang Jun, but you chose the wrong one. If you had not stepped on them, Zheng Lang Jun would not have been so shameless as to hold a grudge against a servant. Takshu stared at Su Ke, and he suddenly felt guilty. Takshu was right. He had the best of both worlds. He would not let Lu Lanting be humiliated, and he would not let the Langjuns lose face. But why did he have to do it? In the end, Su Ke still could not accept his current identity. He turned his face to avoid Takshu's gaze. Takshu only smiled and said coldly, "Since you think you are virtuous and well-read, do you know what it means to die if your master is humiliated?" In that era, gentry nobles had the right to have private soldiers. That was one of the main reasons why they could threaten the imperial power. The aristocratic families of this era had the right to raise private armies and retainers. This was also one of the main reasons why they had such a high status and could even threaten the imperial power. Lu Shi's reputation in Dongqing was like the sun in the sky. Even the current emperor loved and feared him. Not to mention that Lu Shi's reputation in Dongqing was like the sun at high noon. Even the current emperor loved and feared him. Su Ku had slapped the nobles' faces. Although he had made Jiang Pingji proud, he had also attracted more hatred and grudges. From the perspective of an official, what Su Ku had done before was really a bad idea. In the end, Jiang Pingji had to step in and save him from the danger of having his head split open. If it had been a slightly useless Lang Jun, he would definitely have killed himself today. Thinking of this, his face suddenly turned pale, and the wound on his cheek, which was covered with medicine, began to ache. Takshu and Su Ku each had their own thoughts, but their thoughts were ultimately restricted by this era. In fact, when Jiang Pingji punished Su Ku to kneel, she didn't think that deeply. She just felt that Su Ku, the naughty child, was seeking death happily. If he didn't teach him a lesson, wouldn't his tail be too cocky? Not every Lang Jun had the ability to save the damsel in distress like her. If this kind of behavior was placed in the 7th Corps, how could it be erased with just an hour of kneeling? Without a complete set of hellish training and a few days of sparring with the commander, it would be impossible for him to learn his lesson. It was fine for a young man to be high-spirited, but he couldn't really go crazy. He still needed to restrain himself. After turning off the live stream, Jiang Pingji looked at her plan and was lost in thought. The training of the servants in the village can be accelerated. I need to find something for Su Ku to do as soon as possible. I need to temper his temper. Even if he knew that there was a piece of jade in a stone, if he didn't polish it carefully, the jade would be destroyed. Jiang Pingji still hoped that Su Ku would be an accountant in the future. As she was thinking, she took the time to look at the points of popularity in the live stream account. For the past few days, the room was always full, and there was always an unknown number of people queuing outside. Including the scattered gifts, the points of popularity accumulated were actually quite considerable. According to the contract, the points obtained in the end had to be divided equally with the system. Therefore, Jiang Pingji's account only had 10,034 points of popularity. Later, she carefully studied the contract given by the system. A level 1 streamer, which was the beginner streamer, had a maximum audience of 3,000. If she wanted to increase the limit, she had to level up. A level 2 streamer had a maximum audience of 10,000, but she had to pay 100,000 points of popularity. 100,000 points seemed like a lot, but according to the current speed of the live stream, it was very easy to level up. The difficulty was in the subsequent levels. The difficulty would jump by a large margin, and the number of popularity points needed each time was massive. It was simply a bottomless pit that could not be filled, not to mention that there were other, tempting treasures in the shopping center. Encountering such a system, there were only 3 words left in her mind. Buy, buy, buy. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably be unable to resist the temptation and squander as many points as they had. They might even start to think of other ways to get more points. If they couldn't increase the audience limit for the time being, they would think of ways to make the existing audience pay out of their own pockets. Jiang Pingji disdained such behavior, because she knew very well that there was never a free lunch in the world. There must be an unknown trap behind a free lunch. She could not cross the bottom line. Once crossed, it would be like taking drugs, and there would be a second and third time. She opened the character attributes panel and stared blankly at the information on it. Name, Jiang Pingji, Lu Shi, courtesy name Lanting, also known as Lu Lanting. Base strength, 5, strength fusion plus 30, gender, female, disguised as a man, replacing the deceased brother, Lu Lanting, age, 41, 12. Born in the 3rd year of Tianwu's flower festival birth, the second legitimate son, eldest legitimate daughter, of the Lu family in Hejian County. Fiancé, Wei Jingxian, the second legitimate daughter of the Wei family in Hejian County. Specialties, 6 arts of rights, beginner, fighting, expert, analysis, expert. Other abilities, temporary. Attributes, charm, hidden 25, appearance, 75. Channel, streaming, activated, streamer level 1. The reasoning skill had been temporarily changed to expert, and the hidden charm value had increased from 21 to 25. However, These were all useless to her. Her gaze was fixed on one thing: strength fusion plus 30. If you rely on someone, the mountain will collapse. If you rely on others, the only person you can rely on is yourself. Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes and said, "System, when you were bound to me, I heard the sound of the fusion progress. Because the host did not have enough points, the fusion progress was temporarily halted. The final fusion was only 3%. The system quickly replied, "Yes, because the host did not have enough points, the fusion could not progress further." The so-called strength fusion was actually the soul's ability to digitize the strength it had when it was alive and integrate it into the current body. This was one of the host's advantages, winning at the starting line. Jiang Pengji's physical fitness in her previous life was not something that could be reflected by the cold numbers. Jiang Pengji asked, "Can I use my own points to continue the fusion?" Chapter 73. The system paused, as if it was thinking about the meaning of her words. Then it tried to dissuade her with a pained expression. "Host, based on your current strength, it's not worth it to waste your points on the fusion." Jiang Pengji's strength in her previous life could definitely make her a monster that couldn't be killed, but what was the use of that? In this ancient world, Jiang Pengji could exchange points for more useful skills or items that could make her life better, but she was stubborn and wouldn't listen. Moreover, it was a harem system. The host was going to be the queen. Even if Jiang Pengji didn't agree with it, the system wouldn't give up on the target just because the host didn't want to cooperate. If she could perfectly fuse the strength from her previous life, then, who had ever seen an empress who could poke a hole in the emperor's head with one finger? The scene was too beautiful. It didn't dare to look at it. If you broadcast for a few more days, the system will be able to undergo its first upgrade. At that time, there will be more items unlocked in the shop. You can use your points then. It will help you adapt to this era and live a more comfortable life. Since it was called the multidimensional harem streaming system, it had more functions than what Jiang Pengji had seen. What if she used her points on something as useless as the fusion of strength? What if she needed to buy something in case of emergency? Jiang Pengji understood the system's concerns, but she scoffed at it. "No matter what happens, I'm confident that I can handle it perfectly." In her previous life, without the system, she could still rise from a low-level federal soldier to a high-ranking commander. In this life, she had come to an ancient era. Would she be unable to take care of herself without the system's help? The strength belonged to her. Using points to exchange for the fusion was just a fair trade with the system. Due to the limitations of her body's genes, no matter how much she trained, she couldn't recover even 1% of her previous life's strength. Her body was like a glass of water. No matter how much she poured into it, it could only hold 1 cup of water. The fusion the system mentioned was more like optimizing the body's genes. It could change the container from a cup to a water tank. That way, the container could hold more water. Just tell me if these points of popularity can help me recover some of my strength. I don't want to hear anything else. The system was forced into a corner and could only reluctantly say, "You can, but there are too few points, and the fusion effect is very low." Zhong Sunyuan did not dislike this. She also had a faint premonition that if she wanted to fuse all of the martial power of her past life and develop the genes of this body to the same degree as before, the number of points needed might be unimaginable. However, no matter how difficult it was, she still had to give it a try. Sometimes, the system was really too much of an eyesore. It seemed docile, but it always wanted to control her and make her act according to its wishes. Between the host and the system, it seemed that the former was in the dominant position. However, Jiang Pengji tested the system several times and found that it was not the case. At present, the status between them was still relatively fair. It was a cooperative relationship, but what about in the future? The system was so desperate for popularity points that it urged her to start a live stream. What was its motive? He might as well make a bold guess. Popularity points could make the system more powerful. As the host, if he stayed where he was, what would happen then? Her choice conflicted with the system's goal. She couldn't see it now, but once the difference between the two was huge, it would be easy to deal with. Jiang Pingji had never been a puppet who was led by the nose, but she had to maintain the state of being weak even if she didn't want to. Instead of being so passive, it was better to settle for the next best thing and find a way to slowly find the strength of her past life. Jiang Pingji looked down and said, "It's okay. Many a little makes a mickle. Everything has to be done slowly." Seeing that the host was so determined, the system could not force her not to do it. It could only bear with the pain in its stomach and reluctantly agree to her choice. Jiang Pingji heard a system notification sound that was not pleasant to the ear. A virtual screen appeared in front of her. "Host, are you sure you want to use 10,000 points to continue the fusion? Confirm B. Consider." Jiang Pingji did not hesitate and clicked confirm. The points in her account were instantly emptied, leaving only 34 points. She waited for a while, but there was no reaction from her body. Just as she was about to ask what was going on, a sudden sharp pain came from the bottom of her feet. It went straight to her brain, as if two huge iron nails had been forcefully hammered into her body. Her knees weakened and she almost knelt on the ground. However, that was only the beginning. In less than half a breath, Jiang Pingji's face was pale from the pain. Her forehead was quickly covered in cold sweat. Her lips were a little green, the veins on her forehead were bulging, and her eyeballs looked like they were about to pop out. They were bloodshot and looked extremely terrifying. All the muscles in her body were stimulated and began to spasm crazily. Jiang Pingji felt that she had some difficulty breathing, and she could not help but change her expression. She lowered her head to look at her hands, and the corners of her lips curled into a mocking smile. Her originally thin hands were now in the shape of claws due to the spasms, and the joints of her fingers were distinct. It looked extremely terrifying, and because of the intense pain, she was even slightly out of control. She accidentally knocked over the paperweight on the table and made a sound when it fell to the ground. Outside the study, the maid, Xuanmei, heard the noise and asked softly, "Langdon, what are your orders?" Jiang Pingji tried her best to take a deep breath to relieve the feeling of suffocation. She secretly bit the tip of her tongue and let the blood and pain temporarily suppress the spasm of her mouth muscles to avoid suffocation. Her voice was still calm. "Nothing, I accidentally knocked the paperweight to the ground." "Xuanmei, prepare the hot soup." As expected, Xuanmei did not hear anything strange. She respectfully responded and went to order the servant to boil the water for Jiang Pingji. At that moment, Jiang Pingji was in so much pain that she curled her body into a ball. Her breathing became more and more difficult, and her face even turned a little purple. After an unknown amount of time, the sharp pain gradually subsided. Jiang Pingji resisted the pain and did not make a sound. At that moment, she had exhausted all her strength. She lay on the ground with her eyes closed. Her breathing was very weak. After another quarter of an hour, her strength slowly recovered. At that moment, Xuanmei had already returned. She reported through the door, "Langdon, the hot soup is ready." Jiang Pingji heard the noise and secretly rolled her eyes. She gritted her teeth and climbed up. She raised her hand and pulled her sleeve to randomly wipe the sweat on her face. "Help me bathe." Xuanmei carefully gathered her black hair and wrapped it in a handkerchief to prevent it from getting wet. Jiang Pingji pursed her lips. Her pale lips gradually became more rosy under the hot steam. She closed her eyes and leaned against the bathtub. It looked like she was taking a nap, but in fact, she was communicating with the system. Her muscles were sore and swollen. She was too lazy to even lift a finger. Chapter 74. The internet provides you with exciting novels to read. The system said helplessly, "I'm sure the host has already guessed the nature of the fusion force." Jiang Pingji nodded in her heart. Although she was exhausted, she was still very alert. "Genetic enhancement," she said confidently. If Lu Lanting's previous genes meant that she could only have 5 points of combat power, that limit would be raised after the fusion. The system was going crazy. If the host knows this, then you should also know how dangerous it is. You almost died. To be honest, as a qualified system, it had nurtured countless hosts over a long period of time. In the past, There were hosts like Jiang Pingji who put on a brave front. However, after experiencing the pain of integration, most of them would retreat and choose a gentler and more effective method. As long as you have popularity points, what can't you buy? Jiang Pingji replied with a smile, but she was not afraid. It was painful, but she would not die. If she did not have such knowledge and judgment, she would have died a long time ago in her previous life. Die? Not yet. I think I'm in a good state. The system vaguely had an ominous premonition. Jiang Pingji had said so. Could it be that she had not given up on the idea of continuing the fusion? The system's premonition was right. When Jiang Pingji was stubborn, even 10 bulls would not be able to pull her back. 10,000 points to push the fusion rate to 1%. Jiang Pingji opened the stats panel and saw that the fusion force had gone from plus 30 to plus 31. She was slightly disappointed. If she had known this would happen, she would have waited until she had more points before the fusion. Now, she had suffered for nothing. She would definitely remember this next time. The system poured a bucket of cold water on him and said, "This is only the initial stage of fusion, so the points required are not many. When the number exceeds the limit of a normal human, the points required will be more than this. Moreover, the risks required for each fusion will increase exponentially." According to the system's calculations, Jiang Pingji's combat power in her previous life was not as simple as breaking through the limit of a normal human. After living for so many years, it was the system's first time meeting such a troublesome and suicidal host. Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a faint smile. I know this better than you. There was no one who understood the pain and reaction of every gene optimization better than she did. In her previous life, she had been a genetic warrior selected by the Federation. Over the past several decades, she had passed through countless life and death situations. Her life hanging by a thread was a common occurrence for her. She had long since gotten used to it. Moreover, in her opinion, the risk was worth it compared to the bountiful harvest. Jiang Pingji looked at her palm coldly. Her heart was terrifyingly calm, without a trace of emotion. The system continued. According to the host's current streamer level, it is impossible for you to accumulate so many popularity points. The live broadcast room of a first-class anchor only had a maximum audience of 3,000. Assuming that the daily audience reached a maximum of 3,000, the fixed daily income of popularity points would only be 1,500. Even if there were some tips, the chances of encountering a tycoon would be very low. However, for the second and later stages of the fusion, the number of popularity points required would increase exponentially. Sharpening the knife will not delay the work of cutting firewood. If your streamer's level can increase by 1 or 2 levels, the points of popularity that you gain every day will be several times or even more than 10 times what you have now. The system could not understand Jiang Pingji's thoughts at all. Why was the host so stubborn? It was only a month's worth of popularity points to increase the level of the live broadcast room. It was a very worthwhile transaction. It thought that she would refute it this time, but Jiang Pingji agreed with it and agreed with it. She said in her heart, "You are right. If the streamer's level does not increase, the speed of accumulating popularity points will be too slow." The system was secretly delighted. It thought that Jiang Pingji had finally been persuaded. However, what she said next gave it a head-on blow, instantly extinguishing all its enthusiasm. Jiang Pingji asked it, "System, do you think a semi-interactive live broadcast or a fully interactive live broadcast is better? If it's the former, the initiative is still in my hands. If it's the latter, although it can stimulate the audience's enthusiasm, it can easily go wrong." Regardless of whether it was a semi-interactive live broadcast or a fully interactive live broadcast, both had a common feature. After the completion of the live broadcast task, the audience would conduct a survey and vote based on their satisfaction with the content of the live broadcast. According to the audience's satisfaction, they would receive 3 levels of treasure chests: gold, silver, and bronze. When the treasure chests were opened, the streamer would receive random rewards. Among them, there was a card that could directly increase the streamer's level for free. If the system could visualize it, its face would probably be as black as ink. You plan to increase the streamer's level based on looks? Jiang Pingji smiled faintly. Her dark eyes carried some joy. You have to believe that girls who love to smile usually have good luck. The system was about to grind its molars. It could not help but complain, you are really confident in your luck. Girls with bad luck would not be able to smile at all. Cards that could directly increase the streamer's level for free could indeed be obtained by opening treasure chests, but the probability was only a pitiful 1%. It was still the same question. What kind of sin had it committed? How did it encounter such a stubborn host? My luck has always been good. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest. Her black hair was a little damp and scattered behind her head, which made her handsome face look a little more gentle. If I'm unlucky, who else in this world can live another life after death like me? The system was silent for a long time. Once again, it deeply realized that its host was different from the others in the past. Ha, host, you are capricious. The system could not help but clench its teeth. If you don't try, you will never know how bad your luck is. Jiang Pingji did not take the system's words to heart. Instead, she provoked it. Believe me, I am the Emperor of Luck. Jiang Pingji did not know what unlucky or Emperor of Luck meant at first. She had to thank the audience for knowing these words. Every time the stream got a little boring, the audience would use the bullet screen as a chatting platform and chat happily. In the past 2 days, they frequently mentioned words such as unlucky, Emperor of Luck, SSR, and addicted to drawing cards. Jiang Pingji would also read their bullet screen when she was bored. Over time, without a teacher, she slowly understood the meaning of these unfamiliar words. The system was angry. However, when it thought of Jiang Pingji's confident attitude and her previous actions, it felt a little creepy. Could it be that her luck was really that good? If she did not have something to rely on, she would not be so sure that she would be able to increase the streamer's level by looking at her face. The higher the level of the treasure chest, the better the item, and the higher the possibility of getting a free upgrade card. If she really had the ability to get the highest ratings every time and get the gold treasure chest, maybe she could really level up? Thinking of the bright future after leveling up, the system's gloomy mood eased a little and became a little brighter. Life was not just about the present, but also poetry and the future. It should be more optimistic. Chapter 75. After a comfortable bath, her sore limbs finally regained their strength. They were not as weak as before. Jiang Pingji changed into a simple set of home clothes and knelt in front of the bronze mirror. She let Xuanmei and Takshu play with her hair. Noticing Takshu's hesitation on her left, she could not help but open her eyes. She glanced at her and asked softly, "What's wrong, Xuanmei?" At that moment, Xuanmei's gaze fell on her loosened clothes. She could vaguely see the layers of corsets inside. Xuanmei's cheeks were a little flushed after being caught red-handed. She hesitated and bit her lower lip. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Second Langjun, Su Ku is still kneeling in the veranda outside the courtyard. I wonder. As soon as Xuanmei said that, Takshu glared at her. She had no choice but to shut her mouth. She looked worried and timid. Hasn't an hour passed? Why is he still kneeling? Jiang Pingji frowned. She asked Su Ku to kneel and reflect for an hour, which was only an hour. But according to what Xuanmei said just now, did it mean that Su Ku had been kneeling outside for more than 4 hours? At least 4 hours? Takshu snorted. Her hands nimbly tied her long hair into a simple bun. It was a little loose and looked a little casual and lazy. Only Xuanmei is soft-hearted. Based on Su Ku's previous actions, it's not too much to make him kneel for a day and a night. What's more, Langjun only asked him to kneel and reflect for an hour. If he doesn't want to get up, who can hold his shoulders and stop him from getting up? Like a lit firecracker, Takshu's words carried a strong sense of dissatisfaction and anger. Jiang Pengji stood up, gathered her clothes, and tightened the outer robe. Her tone was a little comforting. I think Takshu should change her name. How can this hot temperament be as cold as ice? His heart was clearly burning with passion. I know you feel unfair for me, but Su Ku is different. You can't treat him like an ordinary servant. Takshu's pretty face was tainted by Jiang Pingji's teasing. She said angrily, Lang Jun seems to be enlightened now. You can really say anything. Fortunately, I know Lang Jun's character. If it were a girl, her soul would have been seduced. That sentence could be translated into 4 words. If I didn't marry, why would I seduce her? All right. I will restrain myself from now on. I will definitely not carelessly seduce a girl's soul. After Jiang Pingji finished talking, she turned to Xuanmei and ordered, Go and tell Suku to go and rest early. Tomorrow morning, he will follow me to the village for an inspection. The weather is unpredictable and the humidity is high at night. He has been kneeling for so long. How can his knees withstand the cold? Xuanmei was perturbed and uneasy at first, but after hearing Jiang Pingji's instructions, her pale face regained some color. She knew that second Lang Jun was still the same. He was always so gentle and generous. Takshu scoffed as she watched Sun Mei leave. She was a little disdainful as she muttered softly, wishful thinking. Based on the hearing of others, they definitely could not hear what she said, but that did not include Jiang Pingji. She turned her head and asked suspiciously, How did Xuanmei offend you? I see that you two have a good relationship. Takshu's breathing stagnated. She immediately felt a little awkward, as if she did not know how to answer her question. In the end, she simply gave up and twisted her handkerchief. She bit her lip and said, Lang Jun is kind and pure, and you've been raised as a man since you were young. How would you know the thoughts of ordinary girls? That Xuanmei obviously has other intentions. She's thinking of seeking a higher position. Looking for a higher place? Jiang Pingji smiled and raised her eyebrows. She lowered her voice and asked curiously, Are you saying that Xuanmei has feelings for Suku? Suku was only 17 years old, but in ancient times, he would have been a grown man who could start a family and start a career. He was not bad-looking. Even though his face had been tattooed, it did not diminish his beauty. In Jiang Pingji's eyes, he looked even more mature. Takshu's eyes were a little dazed when she heard her straightforward guess. She seemed to be in disbelief as she patrolled her face back and forth. She was determined to find out something. However, Jiang Pingji's heart was not that easy to pry into. After a while, Takshu gave up. What do you mean by having feelings for Suku? You're obviously disloyal. You think that Suku is a rare commodity. Even though Xuanmei and I are only Lang Jun's maidservants, there are different ranks of maidservants. Lang Jun's situation is special. When Lang Jun turns 20, his status will be even more different. At first, Takshu gritted her teeth angrily. She blushed and skipped over some of the content. Other than the masters of the Lu residence, only Takshu and Xuanmei knew Lu Lanting's true gender. The 2 maidservants had been handpicked by Lu Shi and his second wife. They had been raised since young and were even more particular about their daily necessities than the daughters of wealthy merchants. They were both smart. How could they not know now if they did not know when they were young? Unless there were some unforeseen circumstances, Lu Lanting's gender would have to be kept a secret. As the 2 maidservants who knew the truth, their future was clear. When Lu Lanting came of age, they would become her concubines. If Lu Lanting was a man, it would be a great opportunity for the maidservants. They would become the cream of the crop. Because of their friendship when they were young, even if he couldn't pamper the harem alone, he would still be able to gain some favor. Not to mention, Lu Lanting was a soft-hearted and kind person. Even if they had to work for the legal wife in the future, they would not be treated coldly. Unfortunately, no one knew better than them that Lu Lanting was not a man. She was a woman of the same gender as them. It was normal for Xuanmei to have other thoughts. She wanted to find a way out for herself. Jiang Pingji's mind was sharp. Even if she did not know much about the ancient times, she could make some logical deductions. When she connected the dots between Takshu and Xuanmei, her doubts were instantly answered. She smiled and patted Takshu's hair affectionately. Under Takshu's confused and angry gaze, Jiang Pingji teased, Xuanmei's actions are exactly what you want. Now that she's gone, you will be the only one who can enjoy my love. Takshu was speechless. First, her pretty face blushed, then it turned green with embarrassment. When she realized that Jiang Pingji was only teasing her, she instantly realized that she had been fooled. She was so angry that her eyes were bloodshot. Lang Jun, you're so good at teasing people. Am I a petty person in your heart? Chapter 76. Jiang Pingji almost couldn't hold back her laughter, but she still begged for mercy with a kind voice. It took a lot of effort to quell the little girl's anger. Ahem, let's stop fooling around. Let's be serious. Jiang Pingji coughed softly. Under the gaze of the other party's watery eyes, she said gently, you and Xuanmei grew up together. There's really no need to be hostile towards each other over such a small matter. I know you're feeling indignant for me, but Takshu, both you and she are women, and so am I. I can understand why she did that. Takshu was smart. She instantly understood what Jiang Pingji meant. Her heart skipped a beat. Lang Jun, don't say anything first. Let me finish. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to stop her from speaking. Her tone was still as gentle as before. I can guess a little bit about father and mother's plans. They arranged it this way because they were afraid that you wouldn't be able to keep your mouths shut and leak my secret. They also hoped that I would have someone useful by my side in the future. However, times have changed, and the situation is constantly changing. Who can predict what will happen in the future? From Jiang Pingji's point of view, it was a sin to let two beautiful flowers wither quietly in order to hide her personal secret. She lived openly, so why did she need to hide? She was proud of her gender and never felt like a burden. He smiled and said, you and Xuanmei, I've treated you as my family since you were young. If you have someone you like or have other thoughts, just tell me and I'll arrange it for you. It's not easy for a woman to be born. From a young age, they've experienced the feeling of not being able to control themselves. Now that you've come to be my maidservants, I'll protect you and give you the right to do whatever you want. I'll talk to my father. Before Jiang Pingji could finish speaking, Takshu's eyes, which were already red, were now heavy with tears. Finally, she hugged Jiang Pingji as if she had lost her composure. She complained in her neck, Langjun, you promised not to seduce a girl's soul. Jiang Pingji spread her hands in her heart. She was innocent, so she would not take the blame. It was clearly a pure friendship, so why did people always think of it the wrong way? The system, who had witnessed the entire process, snorted coldly and became more and more depressed about the days ahead. Wipe away your tears. If I were a man, I'd be heartbroken. Jiang Pingji smiled and helped her wipe it with her sleeve. Takshu retorted in a low voice, Langyan, do you mean that your heart doesn't ache anymore? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows meaningfully. That's not it. It's all heartache but in different directions. Takshu was stunned at first. She did not understand what she meant, but she quickly regained her senses. Her exposed skin felt like it was on fire. Jiang Pingji pretended that she didn't see anything. Her expression returned to normal, and she said to her, as for Xuanmei, tell her about it secretly, so that she doesn't fall for it. Although Su Ku was a good person, he was not suitable for her. Her little tricks won't be able to subdue that person. Seeing that her Langjun was sitting and talking in a serious manner, Takshu quickly put away the unnecessary thoughts in her heart. She dared not continue to throw a tantrum. She didn't think much of Jiang Pingji's flattery of Su Ku. Langjun, you're flattering him too much. No matter what, Su Ku was just a servant bought by the Lu residents. He was a lowly servant, not to mention the humiliating mark on his face. What about Xuanmei? Although Taksha didn't like Xuanmei's petty thoughts, she wouldn't deliberately belittle her. She was her Longjuan's trusted servant. Her status was second only to the masters of the mansion and the head housekeeper. If she had any thoughts about Su Ku, it would be because Su Ku was of a higher status. However, from what her Langjun said, it seemed that Xuanmei was not worthy of Su Ku. Jiang Pingji smiled helplessly, but she didn't plan to explain anything. Su Ku looks simple and honest, but he is extremely arrogant and self-centered. Xuanmei will easily be at a disadvantage if she follows him. If she hadn't forcefully bought Su Ku, he might have already escaped from the broker house. If the world was peaceful, Su-ku would indeed have a hard time achieving anything in his life. After all, his lowly background was enough to send him to the 18th level of hell. However, the times made heroes. In a few years, the world would be in chaos. Who could guarantee that he wouldn't take advantage of the situation and soar to the sky? Moreover, if she really wanted to cause trouble in the future and Su-ku satisfied her, then it would be hard to say what would happen in the future. After listening to what Jiang Pingji said, Taksha didn't realize that Jiang Pingji was hiding something. She thought that was the only reason. She whispered discontentedly, Leng Jun is so considerate of her, but she's so opinionated. She's siding with an outsider. Jiang Pingji said, it's just human nature. As long as he didn't have any intention of betraying her or stepping on her bottom line, she wouldn't care about such a small problem. If he stepped on her bottom line or betrayed her, she wouldn't be so easy to deal with. On the other side, after Xuanmei got permission, she walked to the porch with complicated thoughts. She looked at Su-ku, who was motionless like a clay statue. It was late at night, and the air was chilly and damp. Compared to the warmth of the day, it was so cold that her fingertips were red. She was holding a cloak that she had made herself. The style was simple, and the cloth used was also bought by her. As Xuanmei spoke, she put the cloak on Su-ku. Second Lang Jun has given you permission to get up. If you continue to kneel here, people will see you. Who knows what they will think of Second Lang Jun? They might say that she's cruel and doesn't care about her servants. Su-ku was already a little dazed by the night wind. Suddenly, he felt a burst of warmth and fragrance. He couldn't help but look up. He happened to meet Xuanmei's bright and gentle eyes. They were like a clear spring, and he could see into the other's heart with just one look. However, he quickly looked away and didn't dare to look directly at her. No matter how stupid he was, he knew that Xuanmei and Takshu had special identities. In the aristocratic families, they were basically the reserved servants of the young masters. Su-ku was so cold that his lips were a little numb. It's nothing. I made a mistake. I'm reflecting on myself. Xuanmei told Su-ku what Jiang Pingji had said, word for word. After he heard it, his eyes flickered a few times, and then he calmed down. Then he sighed and chuckled. He said inexplicably, Langjun, you're good. He had Takshu, who was sensible, and Xuanmei, who was gentle and warm. One was hard and the other was soft. The former was ordered to remind him, and the latter represented her kindness and softness. Jiang Pingji's performance that day, as well as her magnanimous way of doing things, was admirable. Su-ku raised his hand to gather the cloak, and he staggered to stand up. He cupped his hands in front of his chest and thanked Xuanmei in a low voice. She was the first to hear about what happened outside Jiang Pingji's yard. He was stunned for a long time. It looks like I won't have to use the wolf taming program anymore. Under the candlelight, she pursed his lips, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He suppressed the smile that was about to spill out. There were always two kinds of people who liked to make simple things complicated. One was the smart people, and the other was the smart people. Chapter 77. Take a look at this. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Jiang Pingji threw the booklet she had compiled over the past few days to Su-ku. It was filled with training plans she had made based on the situation in ancient times. In order to come up with these things, she had really racked her brain. It was not that the training plan was difficult, but it was very difficult to make it simple. For example, the training she had undergone since she was a child. All kinds of equipment were currently the most popular mainstream equipment, and the training schedule was also constantly changing according to the growth of her physical fitness. There were strict standards for her 3 meals a day, all in order to maximize the potential of her body. However, this era was too backward. There was no specially formulated nutrient solution, no professional training equipment, no suitable training grounds, and even the people who participated in the training were not even as good as the children of her era in all aspects. She had deleted and modified her own standards over and over again to come up with the finished product today. However, in her eyes, the training content was already very relaxed, but in Su-ku's eyes, It was like a sudden clap of thunder. Of course, he wasn't thinking about how amazing Jiang Pingji's training techniques were, nor was he surprised at how exceptional the training plan was. He wasn't even praising Jiang Pingji's prowess. Instead, he was regretting, did a donkey kick him in the head last night? Why did she feel that the person in front of her was a kind and gentle lord? Lang Jun, you mustn't do that. Those servants are just ordinary people. This kind of torture. Unconsciously, Su Ke voiced out his most honest opinion of the plan. As soon as the words left his mouth, his expression changed. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. She understood what Su Ke meant, and her face turned green. Wait, he said, torture? The two of them looked at each other. In the eyes of the livestream viewers, they were dumbstruck. Cultivation, #PickNose1. What kind of training plan did the host come up with? Young Su seems to be scared silly. Hongyan Yuntian, haha, streamer, there's something wrong with this time travel script. Shouldn't the plot be about Su Ke holding the training plan with both hands and being amazed by it, then being subdued by the host's domineering aura, kowtowing to the host and becoming a brain-dead fan? Hit me if you don't agree, you're right. I'm ready to witness the historic scene of the post-starter subduing his underlings. Why did the two of them end up looking at each other dumbstruck? This scene was so King awkward. Looking at the screen full of, Jiang Pingji was multitasking expressionlessly. She stared at Su Ke and the scrolling comments on the screen. To paraphrase the audience, if he didn't follow the script, it would be really awkward. Is it really that harsh? She picked up the training book that Su Ke dropped in shock. How could it become the torture you mentioned? Su Ke could hear the gloominess in Jiang Pingji's tone. His heart sank, and he realized that he might have misunderstood her. He deliberated and said, Lang Jun was born with divine strength, and your talent is different from ordinary people. The contents listed above are naturally nothing to you. However, those slaves that were bought are all ordinary people. How can the flesh of ordinary people compare to yours? Seeing him carefully flatter her and then tactfully say that the standards for the content were too strict, Jiang Pingji's gloominess dissipated. In your opinion, what is appropriate? Jiang Pingji's tone was calm, and there was a serious look in her eyes. It showed that she was sincerely asking for advice, and not trying to get even with him later. Su Ke hesitated for a while, and instead of answering he asked, Lang Jun, why are you spending so much effort? You may have heard from the slaves about what happened to me a few days ago. I don't want to go through that kind of situation again in my life. Training these servants is to find a place for myself to settle down. Dongqing seems to be peaceful now, but even a place like Hejian County is full of bandits. If I don't have a place to settle down, I may be killed one day. As soon as Jiang Pingji finished speaking, Su Ke suddenly shook his head and retorted, Lang Jun, do you really only care about this? If it's just to clean up the bandits and protect the house, 30 to 50 people are enough. Why do you need to mobilize so many people? I'm afraid you have other unspeakable thoughts. Since you said it's unspeakable thoughts, how can I answer your question directly? Su Ke was speechless. He didn't expect Jiang Pingji to be so unpredictable. There was another burst of laughter on the screen, but this time it was not Jiang Pingji who was laughing at her. Instead, they all felt sorry for Su Ke. Hit me if you're not convinced. The longest road that Su Ke has walked in his life is definitely the streamer's unconventional ways. Cafeteria Daffin young Su Ke, give it a rub. The streamer doesn't care about you, but Auntie cares about you. Carry me away, kiss me. The price of a blue and white asterisk was equivalent to a lollipop and a lover's heart, and one asterisk was equivalent to one livestream coin. Badeo President. Young Su Ke, don't be lured away by that weird auntie. Come into my arms. Domineering President, tipped 520 kidney apples. One kidney apple was equivalent to one livestream coin. 520 kidney apples were 520 livestream coins. Apart from these two people, there were even more rewards. The screen was full of rewards that almost drowned Jiang Pingji's vision. The backstage notifications came one after another, densely packed, with no signs of stopping. Fortunately, she was expressionless, so no one saw through her. Suke didn't know that thousands of people had taken turns to feel sorry for him countless times. His face, which was gradually becoming more determined, showed a trace of a strange expression. His eyes were especially bright and eye-catching. "I already understand what you're thinking, Lang Jun. I won't let you down." "Okay, you think about it." Seeing that, Jiang Pingji already knew what Suke was thinking, but she didn't point it out. "After noon, you'll go out with me to have a look. We'll have a preliminary plan, so it'll be easier to carry it out in the future." She originally planned to let Suke carry out the plan, but now there was a situation, and the standards she set were still too strict. One person is better than two. Suke knew the level of ordinary people in ancient times better than she did, so his suggestion was worth taking. "According to my initial plan, we should do it step by step, increasing the difficulty of the training step by step." Just as Jiang Pingji finished, Suke's heart was sweating profusely. Recalling the contents of the booklet, he couldn't imagine how terrifying the intensity of the training would be if it was done step by step. It wasn't training tigers and wolves, it was clearly training people to death. Chapter 78. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Those with potential are still young, but the older ones don't have enough nutrition, and their overall quality is not good. If they are forced to meet the training standards, they might be lying on the road to training before they become a strong army. However, Jiang Pingji's family was very rich. They didn't have many things, but they had enough food to fill their stomachs. Currently, there were only a dozen or so servants in the farm. She could afford to feed them. "I carefully read what you wrote. Although it is harsh, there are some good points in it." Suke was worried that Jiang Pingji would be angry, but after careful observation he didn't see any displeasure on her face, so he plucked up his courage and continued, "The so-called elite troops are no less than elite weapons, and there are even more elite soldiers." What are elite soldiers? They are strong, fierce, and good at fighting. Strict discipline, strict laws, and strict execution of orders are the second. In my opinion, the latter is the most important. No matter how strong a soldier was, he was only one person, and he could only exert the strength of one person. But if 100 people acted as one, moved in unison, and exerted their strength in one place, what would the result be? Although every training item in Jiang Pingji's plan was frighteningly harsh, and it didn't seem like it could be completed by a normal person, Suke only read it once, but he still found something she emphasized: discipline. Jiang Pingji nodded approvingly. Suke's performance was much better than she had imagined. "Indeed. I read a novel a few days ago. The content was about a fierce general of the previous dynasty who could come in and out of the chaotic army as if there was no one there. His heroic posture was like that of a god, and the army couldn't touch him. But in my opinion, it is a bit ridiculous." Suke was slightly stunned by Jiang Pingji's arrogant words. Although it was only a few words, he could tell who the fierce general of the previous dynasty was, so he was even more confused. That was the peerless general who had followed Emperor Taizu of the Xia dynasty to war, the god of war who had created an extraordinary career, Meng Ziliang. "You don't believe me?" Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. She stood up and took down the bow and arrows. She said to Suke, "Why do you think it's the general who is too brave and not the enemy who is too useless? In my opinion, it's just a normal elite soldier running into a bunch of idiots. If he was a real tiger, wolf, or lion, how could he have fallen into the awkward situation of a group of dragons without a leader and allowed a mortal with a body of flesh and blood to move freely in the army formation? Was it because the horse beneath him was as fast as lightning, and even the arrows couldn't catch up? Or could it be that his body was made of copper and iron and was impervious to swords and spears? They're just a bunch of cowards who have no discipline, no desire to win, and only fear death. Ants could even bite an elephant to death. How could an army of 10,000 people not be able to stop a mortal with flesh and blood? Even if Jiang Pingji was in her previous life, she wouldn't dare to say that she could face tens of thousands of blades and escape unscathed. What she wanted were tigers, wolves, and lions. Those were people who would truly put their heads on their waistbands and fight to the death. Not to mention a general riding a white horse, even a giant riding an elephant would be chopped into minced meat by a flurry of knives. Su Ke's rationality told him that what Jiang Pingji said was too idealistic and too absurd. However, when he thought of the scene of 10,000 people acting as one, orderly and disciplined, he couldn't help but feel his blood boil. Even his brain began to heat up. Cafeteria Dafinanti, the young man is done for. Badeo Zhangzi, this streamer is poisonous. She's contagious. Xianxia, is Su Ke possessed by a chunibyu? It feels like his eyes are glowing. Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan, I don't care. I just love the streamer who is in the late stage of chunibyu. Jiang Pingji sneaked a peek at the comments on the bullet screen. The little bit of blood that had just risen was instantly extinguished. Instead, there was a sweet feeling of awkwardness and helplessness in her heart. If there was a king who ruined the atmosphere, it would definitely be the audience who laughed all day long. She raised her hand and patted Su Ke, who was immersed in the hot blood, and said in a hoarse voice, "Where was I just now?" "Continue, Su Ke." His blood was not boiling yet. It was very inhumane to pat him halfway to wake him up. Did you understand? Although Jiang Pingji said it lightly, it was no different from wishful thinking to achieve that step with the current conditions. Strict enforcement of orders and prohibitions. This phrase seemed to be simple, but it was very difficult to achieve. The first problem was the ridiculously high illiteracy rate in this era. If they could not even fully understand the orders, how could they carry them out accurately? The second problem was the ridiculously low execution rate in this era. As mentioned before, there were as many as 350,000 people participating in a war. The real deciding factor might not even be 50,000 people. What were the other 300,000 people for? Basically, they were there to do nothing to gain experience and military merits, or to fish in troubled waters, just to fill their stomachs with military pay. If their side won, they would charge forward while they had the advantage of numbers. If they lost, they would turn around and run away. Apart from those who did nothing, the remaining 50,000 elite troops were very unqualified in Jiang Pingji's eyes. They were far from the standard of tigers, wolves, and lions. In the chaos, the elite troops might be able to suppress their inner fear of death and carry out the orders of their superiors. Of course, this possibility was very small. It was more likely that they would take advantage of the chaos to become deserters and only care about their own lives. This was because after the army was defeated, the first to bear the brunt of being demoted was the leader, not the large number of troops. Because of this, in ancient times, the morale of the troops was very important. Otherwise, it would be extremely easy for the troops to be disorganized and unable to recover after a setback. Unless they encountered an enemy who was more dispirited than them, if the difference in the number of troops between the two sides was not big, their side would definitely lose. However, at the end of the day, to put it bluntly, there was only one word: discipline. When a group of disciplined sheep met a group of disorganized wolves, they would win without any suspense. After a deep conversation, Su Ke's eyes opened wider and wider. The way he looked at Jiang Pingji from time to time was a bit fiery. At first, he only thought that she was just an ordinary aristocratic family's son who was greedy for beauty. Later, after the incident at the assembly, she bravely stood up for him. Su Ke labeled Jiang Pingji as quite powerful, arrogant and unruly, and dissolute. After what happened last night, he felt that she was shrewd and seemed to have everything under her control, including people's hearts. Now, his impression of her was refreshed again. If Su Ke had been a little unwilling before, he had now completely put away his previous attitude and understood his position. Even if he was just a layman, just by listening to her talk, he felt that the small military formation she mentioned was very feasible. Indeed, the person in front of him was going to do something big. Dongqing had not completely fallen into chaos yet, but she was already thinking about how to do it. Chapter 79. After experiencing his mother's unjust death and the fact that he almost died of injustice, Su Ke's impression of the aristocratic families had dropped to the lowest level. When he lost all his dignity and was manipulated like a commodity by the human traffickers, he had even fantasized crazily that if he could rise to prominence one day, he would definitely take revenge on those vermin of the country who did not know the suffering of the people and had no regard for human life. However, these thoughts were just thoughts. Not to mention those aristocratic families with deep foundations, even the local gentry could easily control his life and death, let alone the fact that he was now just an official slave. He had gone from a commoner to a lowly commoner, and there was an irremovable mark of humiliation on his face. He had long since lost all hope in this life. However, due to a freak combination of factors, it was bought by this special Langjun from an aristocratic family. It was as if a completely different life door had been opened. Su Ke had thought that he was arrogant, and couldn't bear to listen to any unpleasant words, but in fact, he was surprisingly easy to talk to. Of course, Su Ke wouldn't treat this Langjun as a harmless little rabbit just because he had taken his advice several times. Not only was the other party not a harmless bunny, it was a silent tiger that seemed to be resting lazily but was actually extremely dangerous. She took his advice only because it was useful. Even so, Jiang Pengji's reaction was beyond Su Ke's expectation. To describe it in modern terms, it would probably be, this young master of the aristocratic family was different from those coquettish wretches outside. He was exceptionally pure and unpretentious. For example, now, he didn't understand. Langjun was the only legitimate son of the second branch of the Lu family. According to the gossip of the other servants, the second branch of the Lu family was extremely rich. So, as a noble scholar, how could she know the price of rice, vegetables, and fruits so clearly? He even remembered the prices in the last few days? At most, he would praise Lu Langjun for having an outstanding memory, for having a photographic memory, and for being able to recall what he heard. But why was he smiling and bargaining with the merchants like an ordinary farmer? That stingy bargaining technique stunned him. He couldn't help but have an illusion that the second branch of the Lu family was so poor that they couldn't even feed themselves. Su Ke wasn't the only one who was dumbfounded. The audience watching the live broadcast were also so shocked that they dropped the melons in their hands. Cafeteria Daffinanti, what an almighty streamer! She's so cool even when she's haggling. Lan Chueyubuja, bargaining and whatnot, it feels super down to earth. But host, didn't you notice that he was about to cry? Wujiangja Kaiyi, haha, the shopkeepers who almost cried when the streamer tried to bargain with them. Hit me if you don't agree, I'm relieved. I'm thankful that the host isn't from this world. Otherwise, it would be too scary. As an experienced clothing store owner, I felt that if I met such a troublesome customer, I would suffer a huge loss. I wouldn't be able to continue my business. A group of spectators expressed that Jiang Pengji was very good at bargaining. Although they felt sorry for the shop owner, they were still happy to watch the show. However, other than the onlookers who only knew how to laugh, there was also Su Ke. Langjun. Su Ke wanted to say that she was calculative, but that was not a good word. He was also afraid of offending her, so he awkwardly said, "If this gets out, it will greatly damage your reputation." A noble son of an aristocratic family bargaining with a merchant. Even if he maintained his demeanor, it was inevitable that he would have a bad reputation if it got out. Jiang Pengji sneered and said carelessly, "You speak as if I, your Langjun, have a reputation? Who in Hejian County doesn't know the reputation of the Lu Manor's prodigal son? The manor does not lack money and rice, but you don't know how expensive it is if you don't manage the household." These merchants saw that I was dressed well, and I was young and ignorant, so they asked for an exorbitant price. They raised a price of 1 copper coin to 10 copper coins. Do I look like a fat sheep to you? Shou Shiguan, how can there be such a cruel sheep like the host in this world? It was the shopkeeper who was being ripped off. As soon as this comment came out, all the viewers who were watching the live broadcast immediately agreed. That was absolutely right. Su Ke silently looked up at the sky. After that day's fair, the reputation of his Lang Jun had indeed spread, but it was accompanied by the comments of the prodigal son. There were both praise and criticism. However, none of the masters in the manor cared, and the people involved even took the initiative to push the reputation onto themselves. Moreover, if I don't tell them my name, how will they know who I am? Even if they ask, I will only say that my name is Su Xiaoyu, and I am the servant of the Lu Manor's Lang Jun. As soon as Jiang Pingji said this, Su Ku, who was following behind her, almost stumbled and fell. Could it be that his main task in the Lu Manor was not to accompany her in her studies, but to help her Lang Jun be the scapegoat? After showing Su Ku around, Jiang Pingji asked again, "Have you memorized everything?" Su Ku nodded. Although his memory was not as good as Jiang Pingji's, he still had a photographic memory, so he remembered everything. That's good. In the future, you will be in charge of the farm's expenses and purchases. Make an account book and record everything. You have to be strict with their training. If anyone dares to slack off, you will be severely punished. There will be no room for mercy. If there is punishment, there will be rewards. For those who perform well, you should also be rewarded appropriately. We are still short on manpower, so it shouldn't be difficult to manage. Jiang Pingji bought Su Ku to be the accountant, manage the household affairs, and supervise the training of the servants. One person could take on multiple roles. According to Lu Shi, he would not interfere in this matter, so she had to figure it out on her own. In fact, she did not need others to tell her what to do. Before Su Ku could answer, Jiang Pingji continued, "This is your training and training. Armchair strategizing is just empty talk. If you want to verify your own ideas, you have to put them into practice. You don't have to do everything yourself, but you have to be aware of it. You won't be deceived by your subordinates. Don't think that these purchases are simple. There is more to it than meets the eye." It was the same thing, but the quality was different, and the price was different. It was hard to guarantee that no one would use shoddy goods to cheat him. Don't think that it was a small matter. What if you looked at the bigger picture and the more detailed picture? There were many ways to go about it. For a long time, Su Ku did not say a word. Instead, he looked at Jiang Pingji with surprise and suspicion. His eyes seemed to be overstepping his authority. Jiang Pingji asked, "What are you looking at?" Su Ku felt as if his worldview had been reshaped. His impression of the gentry's son had also been reset. He said gently, "I never thought that you would be so familiar with these household affairs." A gentry's son had a more detailed understanding of the prices of goods than a former commoner like him. He knew the prices of all the shops, stalls, taverns, and eateries within a few miles. Wasn't he the pampered son of the inner house? "Heh, you wanted to say that I haggled over every penny. What? You changed your mind in less than a quarter of an hour." Chapter 80. However, no matter how Su Ku thought about it, he did not seem to have said what he was thinking. However, he did not continue to think about it. He only thought that he had inadvertently let the cat out of the bag, so he immediately apologized. "Why do you have to make it so formal?" Jiang Pingji moved sideways and only accepted half of the bow. "Moreover, you did nothing wrong. If what happened just now was spread, people would definitely say that Lang Jun of the Lus is stingy and harsh." "You are right." Su Ku was right. She just did not care about her reputation. What did other people's words have to do with her? Su Ku said sullenly, "Even so, Lang Jun is open-minded and open-minded. I don't think you would care about other people's opinions." So, his previous persuasion was just nonsense to Jiang Pingji, and his unspoken criticism was a taboo. Jiang Pingji did not say anything. Her head hurt, so she poked the system. She complained, "System, I feel like the generation gap between him and me is too big. I don't think I blamed him just now, did I? Did he have to act like he was guilty and remorseful?" The system said, "This is probably the difference between a gentleman and a hooligan." Jiang Pingji was speechless. Damn it. Su Ku realized that his Lang Jun was not only familiar with all kinds of affairs, but she was also passionate about carpentry, which others thought was cheap and distracting. She had bought a lot of wood and tools when she went out. Was she going to do carpentry herself? But this time, no matter how many thoughts he had, he did not voice them. He chose to watch silently and wanted to know the deeper meaning behind his Longjuan's actions. He had a feeling that Jiang Pingji would not keep him confused for too long this time. Sitting outside the carriage, Su Ke looked down. His eyes fell on a familiar place, and he could not help but be stunned. It had only been a few days, but he felt as if it had been a lifetime. That night, he had tried his best to escape from the prison, but he did not expect to be intercepted by Lu Shi and his men. Later, he became Lu Shi's page boy. While they were still on the road, they could see smoke rising from the farmhouse from afar. They could vaguely see the silhouettes of people plowing the fields, a few children chasing and playing, and even a white-haired old farmer sitting at the entrance of the village, smoking from time to time, looking peaceful and leisurely. Jiang Pingji lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked into the distance. The audience in the streaming room could also see the high-definition live stream. "Papa, don't hit me, it feels like my hometown. I remember when I was young, the village was not developed yet. When it was mealtime, smoke would rise from the chimneys of every house. When I saw this, I knew it was time to go back and eat." Tong Huashani say, yes. It's the same in my hometown. When he was young, he didn't have a kindergarten. He basically let them run around the mountains when he was crazy. But now, there were only a few elderly people in the village. The younger ones had all gone out to work. Rensha Wangka Xiaoming. I grew up in the city. I've eaten pork, but I've never seen a live pig run. As soon as the topic was brought up, it seemed that the whole live stream instantly entered into a nostalgic theme. They all talked about their childhood villages. "Cutest husky, my village has been greatly improved. There are many small factories built. It's developed, but I can't see the scene in my childhood memory anymore. I can't see the blue sky anymore. The fields are so barren that weeds are growing." Jiang Pingji sat in the carriage with one hand on the table. She was bored and looked at the scenery outside or read the comments to kill time. The coachman drove the carriage skillfully and tried his best to reduce the vibration so that the nobles in the carriage would not feel uncomfortable. Su Ke, who was outside, said in a low voice, "Leng Jun, we've arrived." Jiang Pingji came back to her senses and got out of the carriage. She avoided Su Ke's attempt to help her up and jumped down. For convenience, she had changed out of the fluttering, wide-sleeved cloak and replaced it with a simple and refined brown dress. To be honest, she had had enough of wearing the complicated, anti-human, open-crotch dress. What's the use of tightly wrapped clothes? There was still air underneath. "Let's go," Jiang Pingji said with a smile and led the way forward. The children who were playing saw the strangers coming and ran back, laughing. The audience in the live streaming room felt that the village scene was familiar and warm, but it was a new experience for Jiang Pingji, who was used to cold cities and advanced machinery. It was as if her cold and lonely heart was warmed by the scene. They were dressed very simply. Jiang Pingji wore the brown dress that commoners often wore, which made her look very low-key. Fortunately, the carriage had the emblem of the Lus on it. Although the head of the village had never seen Jiang Pingji before, he knew that the person in the carriage must be from the main family. When he learned that the young man in brown was the second Lang Jun of the Lus, he was so scared that he did not dare to speak. "Relax. I'm just here to see the people who were sent to the village a few days ago. Did any of them try to escape these days?" After asking the head of the village, Jiang Pingji looked at Su Ke, who looked embarrassed. Even if Lu Shi had not sent people to stop them, Su Ke would not have been able to escape from the boundaries of the farm. Jiang Pingji had also sent people to keep an eye on him. The head of the village knelt down obediently and answered with fear. He was afraid that he would offend the Lang Jun and bring trouble to the village. Dongxing seemed to be peaceful, but corrupt officials were running rampant. The gentry in the villages exploited the people. How could the commoners live a peaceful life? Too many people lived in misery. Not only did they have to bear heavy taxes, but they also had to face bandits. In comparison, the tenants in the farm lived a very comfortable life. Everyone in the surrounding villages was envious of them. The main family was kind and had the advantage of money. The bandits did not dare to come and take advantage of them. Most of the tenants lived a happy life. If they did not serve the guests well and angered the Langjun of the main family, they would have a hard time in the future. Except for Su Ku, who was taken away, the rest of the people who were sent to the village were arranged to stay in the farm. Because they did not have specific instructions, they did not dare to make decisions. They only sent a few farmers to keep an eye on them in case any of them escaped. It's good that they did not escape. Go and get those people here. Jiang Pingji said to the head of the village and then turned to Su Ku. You will have to work hard for the next few days. Stay in the farm for some time and keep an eye on them for training. When everything is on the right track, you will be assigned to someone you can trust. I will allow you to borrow some books from the study of the Lu's house while you are staying in the farm, in case you fall behind in your studies. Work and study were two different things. Su Ku was still young, so he had to focus on his studies. He could not neglect one thing. A subordinate who could not improve himself at any time was not a good subordinate. Although she did not show it, Jiang Pingji was treating Su Ku like an assistant in the internal affairs of the army in her previous life. Chapter 81. The Internet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Jiang Pingji was very clear about her position, be it in her previous or current life. She used to be the leader of the whole army, the core pillar of the army, the belief of all the soldiers, and the confidence of the whole army. Ahem, in layman's terms, she was the mascot in times of peace and the alpha wolf in times of war. She was in charge of the war, and the internal affairs and diplomatic contacts of the army were handed over to her assistants. She was a slacker in one of the subjects. War was her home field, and she was not good at other things. She could not blindly command others, could she? Now that she had given Su Ku the authority to manage the internal affairs and personnel, she naturally would not command others in this area. If Su Ku could not control the situation, it would not be too late for her to intervene. Jiang Pingji and Su Ku formulated a detailed training process and stages based on the principle of making full use of the resources and progressing step by step. The initial training period was not long, and the tasks were not heavy. They were given enough time to adapt. After they had fully adapted, the intensity of the training and other activities would be gradually increased. When they were not training, they would cultivate the fields, work in the fields, or help the other tenants of the farm. In order to stimulate the motivation of the training, they were divided into groups of 5, and each group would select a corporal. The corporal would receive more than half of the monthly allowance than the others. Of course, the corporal was not fixed. There would be a selection every month, and the best performance would win. There was also a competition between the groups, and the group with the best performance would receive an extra half of the monthly allowance. There were rewards and punishments, and the punishments were more severe than the rewards. There was a monthly examination, and the worst performance would be deducted 10% of the monthly allowance, and the training tasks for the next half month would be 10% more than the others. The group with the worst overall performance would be deducted 10% of the monthly allowance, and the training tasks for the next half month would be 10% more than the others. In addition, if an ordinary person made a mistake or caused trouble, the whole group would be punished. If the corporal deliberately caused trouble, the whole group would be punished. These few rules seemed simple, but in fact, they formed a relationship of supervision and restraint between the corporals, and the corporals. The corporals enjoyed more benefits, but they also had to bear more responsibilities. They shared weal and woe with each other. They seemed independent, but in fact, they were one. Jiang Pingji and Su Ke had a detailed discussion about the amount of silver each person would receive each month. After consulting various sources, they finally decided on the amount. Not long after, the head of the village came over with a group of people. Looking at those people's spirit and appearance, they were indeed better than when they were in the broker house. I bought you from the broker house for a reason, not to let you come here to enjoy life. I'll cut to the chase. No matter what you do in the future, you'll have to listen to Su Ku's orders. If anyone tries to cause trouble, don't blame me for being ruthless. Su Ku? Many of the servants had heard of this name and knew who Su Ku was. Hearing this name, some of the bolder ones couldn't help but raise their heads slightly. They found that Su Ku, who was originally just like them, or even more down and out than they were, was now dressed appropriately. His appearance was also more plump than a few days ago, and his spirit was not the same as before. For a moment, many people felt jealous and envious. However, before they could think further, Jiang Pengji's words were like a basin of cold water splashing over their faces. It was a very small scene, but Su Ku's hands were slightly trembling with excitement, and his expression was hidden in the shadows. I'm not a ruthless master. If you're dissatisfied, you can say it. If it's reasonable, I'll listen. If it's unreasonable, then shut up. Jiang Pengji glanced at everyone with indifference that made people dare not look directly at her. She gave Su Ku a wink, and the young man understood and went forward to explain the training in detail. Hearing that they could eat and wear warm clothes every day, and they could get extra monthly silver, those people were all happy. Nowadays, it was not easy to survive in this world. There were natural and man-made disasters that forced people to have no way to live. Hejian County was still prosperous, but some other poor counties were full of starvation and bandits. In some serious places, 9 out of 10 houses were even empty. After they were bought, they found that Su Ku was gone the next day. They were worried for many days, for they were afraid of being implicated by Su Ku. Now that the dust had settled, Su Ku, who they thought had been beaten to death, was standing in front of them. The fierce master in their imagination was actually kind and gentle. For a moment, many people breathed a sigh of relief. As for the training, it was all physical work, so it should not be too tiring. Jiang Pengji saw that they were relieved. She smiled and said coldly, "The Lus don't raise useless people, and the monthly silver is not that easy to get. I didn't buy all of you just to guard the house, and it's not something that can be dismissed with just a few superficial tricks." The young man's voice was mostly immature, but when they heard Jiang Pengji's words, they felt that the air was stagnant and cold. Their backs were covered in cold sweat, and a chill spread from the soles of their feet to their brains. Unspeakable fear lingered in their hearts. Although Hejian County is prosperous, there are also mountain bandits in the nearby mountains. They are evil bandits who rob houses, and they are the enemies you'll have to deal with after your training. You can train carelessly and not take it to heart, and then use this kind of training results to fool me. However, in the future, when you meet those vicious bandits, they will not be merciful because of this and let you live. As soon as Jiang Pengji said that, Su Ku could not help but raise his head to look at her. He was a little surprised. That was not what they had agreed on beforehand. However, the thin, immature boy with his hands behind his back was particularly dazzling under the sun. Not only was Su Ku obsessed with the scene, but there were also fangirls in the streaming room who kept sending gifts. To Feiqiu, "The streamer is so handsome that I can't close my legs QWQ. Daoist Xianyu is poisonous in the chrysanthemum. I really want to be pressed on the ground by the streamer. By you strength. That. Jinginiang, upstairs, if you continue like this, you will lead the children astray." The system laughed so hard that its eyes could not be seen. The depression it had been feeling for the past few days had all dissipated. It didn't matter if the streamer's style was strange. Anyway, the audience was generous and the streaming was getting better and better. Ignoring the panicked expressions of the crowd, Jiang Pengji smiled coldly. "The Lu family does not raise useless people, and I, Lu Shi, do not need a group of useless people to be an eyesore in front of me. I will give you 3 months. When the time comes, the bandits will die or you will die. It is all up to you." A wolf that had not seen blood might be weaker than a lamb that had seen blood. Jiang Pengji wanted to train a group of bloodthirsty tigers and wolves, not a group of sheep that could only perform acrobatics. Chapter 82. Jiang Pengji was shorter than everyone there, but her aura easily crushed everyone. Su Ku stared at her. In a trance, he saw a fierce tiger with a strong body. Blood and flesh hung from the corners of its mouth. Its muscles were tense, ready to strike, and it was staring at its prey. Her eyes were fierce and cold. Being stared at by her, It was as if he was already destined to die. When he came back to his senses, the other party was still a young man bathed in sunlight. His black hair reflected the light, and there was a halo around him. After a while, although everyone was trembling in fear and their teeth were chattering, no one had the courage to raise any objections. The corners of Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a cold smile. She squinted her eyes, revealing her slender and long eyes. A trace of mischievousness and interest flashed across her eyes. Since there are no objections, let's begin. She raised her hand and threw the sandalwood fan in Su Ku's direction. Su Ku instinctively reached out to catch it. The familiar fragrance on the fan made his whole body tremble. He subconsciously thought of Lu Shi's cold and venomous eyes that night. It couldn't be helped, he had been traumatized. No, now was not the time to be afraid. His Lang Jun had said to start. What start? Was this part of the process set up at the beginning? Before the confused Su Ku could figure out what start meant, Jiang Pingji's next words almost scared him half to death. Jiang Pingji said leisurely. Su Ku's heart skipped a beat. I will choose the first batch of sergeants. I will be fair and impartial. She continued, I know that some of you are already thinking of retreating, afraid that you will lose your life in the hands of a ruthless bandit. However, the indenture that concerns your lives is in my hands, so you don't dare to act rashly. Now, I will give you a chance. Whoever defeats me, I will release their indenture, return their freedom, and give them a year's worth of silver. After a long time, Su Ku's deepest impression of Jiang Pingji would be the image of her curling her thin lips and shining eyes under the afternoon sun. Come at me one by one, or all at once. You don't have to be restrained. Life and death are up to fate. It's all up to the will of heaven. As soon as she said that, the crowd became restless. They didn't expect Jiang Pingji to be so arrogant. They were all children of poor families. They had been working in the fields since they were young, so they were naturally strong. Even though Jiang Pingji was the son of the noble first wife of the Lu family, and she might have trained with a martial arts master to strengthen her body, but she was thin and weak. She looked like a chicken without much meat. No matter how you looked at it, she couldn't be compared to them, could she? If he won against her, he would be able to get back the indenture and even get a year's worth of silver? Was there really such a good thing? Everyone looked at each other in dismay, their steps hesitating. No one dared to take the lead, fearing that this was just a trap to test them. Su Ku was anxious. He wanted to pull Jiang Pingji back, but he was afraid of offending her. If he did nothing, what would he do if she was injured by those reckless men? To be more serious, what if he was beaten to death by random punches? His heart was restless, as if there was a small tongue of fire licking his heart, causing him to feel even more anxious and tormented. However, in the next moment, he inadvertently saw the smile on the corner of her lips. Her eyes revealed a look of anticipation. Su Ku suddenly stopped in his tracks. He couldn't help but think of that day at the gathering. Jiang Pingji had also teased the crowd in the same way. There was a look of disdain in the depths of her eyes. That was a signal. She didn't take her opponents seriously at all. Thus, he silently stopped. The atmosphere became more and more stagnant. Everyone felt as if there was a layer of seemingly thin, but in fact, extremely heavy stone pressing down on their hearts. It made them inexplicably nervous. Their breathing was heavy and hurried, and their backs were sweating profusely. It was as if they were bearing a weight that they couldn't bear. None of you dare? Jiang Pingji spoke appropriately. She picked a sensitive time when the pressure in everyone's hearts had reached its limit. As soon as she finished speaking, an adult man with slightly red eyes dashed out of the crowd. He was the most muscular of all the servants, and he was also the strongest. He waved a fist that was as large as a boulder and directly attacked Jiang Pingji's face, bringing with it a strong gust of wind. Finally, there's someone with guts. Jiang Pingji laughed softly. She didn't care about the fist at all. The head of the manor was already so scared that his chest was beating wildly. He almost couldn't keep up with the rhythm of his breathing. Su Ku couldn't bear to look at it, so he tilted his head to avoid eye contact. Everyone in the streaming room subconsciously held their breath and clenched their fists slightly. At that moment, Some people were complaining about why the streaming screen was so high definition. It made them feel as if the fist would break through the screen and directly hit their faces. Some of the more timid ones were even mentally prepared for the streamer to be splattered with blood on the spot. Many streamers liked to do things that courted death in order to attract popularity. They didn't expect Jiang Pingji to follow in their footsteps. Among the people present, the ones who were least worried were the minority of the streaming audience who had seen Jiang Pingji's valiant fighting ability. While everyone else was trembling with fear, they were the only ones who were excited and opened their eyes wide, afraid that they would miss any exciting moment. Good move! Faced with the menacing fist, Jiang Pingji didn't dodge. Instead, she took a step forward and directly met the opponent head-on. She used her side palm to block the opponent's wrist and offset most of the force. Then she used her palm to shake off the opponent's wrist. She opened her palm wide and grabbed the opponent's arm. She turned around and used the opponent's strength to fight back. Her movements were simple, but she used the force to the extreme. After all, these were the servants who had to be trained. She couldn't just punch them until they were unconscious. Who would train them if they were lying on the mattresses moaning and moaning? Therefore, Jiang Pingji only wanted to teach them a little lesson. She just needed to beat them until they were completely convinced. The seventh corps was bellicose. Not only was their slogan "cause trouble," but they also had some bad habits that outsiders thought were very rude. Every year, 99% of the new recruits had to go through the recruit baptism. To put it bluntly, it was to go against the veterans and then be ruthlessly beaten up. Young people were always hot-tempered. They had to be beaten up. Otherwise, it would be difficult to discipline them in the future. Similarly, these servants each had their own thoughts. They might not take training seriously in the future, so they deserved to be beaten up. Instead of worrying about this problem in the future, it was better to beat them up now. For Jiang Pingji, there was nothing in this world that couldn't be solved with a good beating. If there was, she would beat them up again. The servant who was the first to act was like a signal. It made the hesitation in the hearts of the others dissipate instantly. Taking advantage of their momentary courage, they pounced on Jiang Pingji. They had the advantage in numbers. Were they afraid that they couldn't beat a young and weak Lang Jun from an aristocratic family? They didn't ask for anything else. They didn't want to beat her to death. After all, if they killed her, they would be buried with her. They only wanted to win against Jiang Pingji. As long as they won, she had made a promise in front of everyone. They dared not go back on their words for the sake of their pride. Chapter 83. The Internet provides you with wonderful novels to read. More than a dozen people couldn't even touch the hem of Jiang Pingji's clothes, let alone cause her any trouble. They had no combat discipline, no sense of cooperation, and no tactics to speak of. They only knew how to rush around like headless flies. Not only could they not exert the strength of 1 + 1 = 2, but they were also holding each other back. Jiang Pingji had no difficulty in dealing with them. Corpses were constantly being thrown to the ground with dull thuds. Su Ku opened his eyes slightly and saw Jiang Pingji in a plain brown robe strolling among the crowd. Her movements were simple, but she had the demeanor of a master. "I've never seen anyone weaker than you. You want to suppress bandits? Why don't you go buy an embroidery brush and stay in the house to learn how to do needlework? With this kind of ability, if I take you to suppress bandits, you won't even be enough to kill one person." Jiang Pingji had perfect control of her strength. She didn't injure or cripple them. However, they wouldn't be able to stand up and fight with her for a while. His venomous tongue was unleashed, stomping on wherever it hurt. The men were red in the face, as if living in the world was a waste of food, and committing suicide out of shame would pollute the land. "Look at you. You're all so weak. Your legs are like noodles. You can't even stand straight. You'll fall if you stumble. You'll lie on the ground and wail for a long time. Did you not eat enough during the day? Or did you lose your body on a woman at night? Or did you sleep too much in bed?" Jiang Pingji sarcastically said. She never paid attention to her limits, so she inadvertently used dirty words. Su Ku, a young boy, blushed. He looked at Jiang Pingji as if he was looking at a monster. How could such vulgar words come out of the mouth of a noble Langjun who was raised in a noble family? Jiang Pingji acted as if nothing had happened to Su Ku. She didn't think what she said was wrong. Was this standard vulgar, dirty, and violent? Then what about the fact that she had drunk alcohol and won the championship of the Dirty Stories competition? She tried to use elegant words to express herself. The system, which had been happy a moment ago, was now paralyzed on the sofa and couldn't take care of itself. With such a host, it was already a salted fish. The bystanders were dumbstruck, but there was a group of people who were so excited that they couldn't stop. Notifications flooded the screen, flipping page after page. Domineering president, rewarded 13-14 kidney apples. Viewer, come and hit me if you're not convinced, rewarded 11 sets of 520 blue and white side items. Viewer, stupid network card crippled, rewarded 99 blue enchantresses. The most eye-catching thing was a huge firework that exploded on the virtual screen. The cool special effects almost occupied the entire screen. Viewer, so poor that only have money left, tipped a luxurious private yacht. Viewer, so poor that only have money left, tipped a luxurious private yacht. Viewer, so poor that only have money left, tipped a luxurious private yacht. The same announcement was repeated 9 times. The entire live broadcast room was silent for a second before it exploded. Cultivation, wow, he's really a nouveau riche. He's so poor that he only has money left. 9 luxury private yachts. Cafeteria d'affinanti, nouveau riche, please hang me wherever you point me. Penguin girl, although there are very few people in our live broadcast room, there are many people who are stupid and rich underscore. Smiley face 3, angle, underscore a luxurious private yacht was equivalent to 1,000 popularity points, which required 1,000 streaming coins. If converted to the currency of their dimension, it would be 1,000 renminbi. The nouveau riche rewarded 9 yachts in a row, which meant that he didn't even blink and directly threw in 9,000. For other popular live broadcast rooms, this bit of reward was nothing, but for this new live broadcast room, it was a rare large amount. Jiang Pingji was stunned. Looking at the points of popularity in her account, she secretly raised her eyebrows. She still didn't show her emotions. So poor that only have money left. The streamer is great. Reward her. Look, the nouveau riche was so indifferent. However, Jiang Pingji laughed coldly in her heart and threw it to the back of her head. There was no other reason. When the special firework reward filled the entire screen, the system issued a live broadcast task backstage. A song of colorful clothes dancing, the beauty's voice spread everywhere. Today, there is a viewer, poor that only have money left, who wishes for the streamer to dance to a song. The dance is moving and the duration is not less than 10 minutes. Task reward, 9 luxurious private helicopters. Accept, B. Consider rejecting. The prices of the luxurious private helicopters and the luxurious private yachts were the same. They were virtual reward currency in the live broadcast room. In other words, if Jiang Pingji was willing to accept the task and dance in front of the live broadcast audience for 10 minutes to satisfy the nouveau riche and give a high evaluation, she could receive another 9,000 points of reward. After deducting the system's bonus, she could still get half of it. She didn't expect that before she could choose the semi-interactive mode or the fully interactive mode, the nouveau riche had already seriously studied the rules of the live broadcast room and issued a live broadcast task with a high reward. This was unique to the designated live broadcast mode. Before the system could scream in excitement, Jiang Pingji had already chosen to reject the task. The reward stored in the system was instantly refunded when the nouveau riche issued the task. Thus, its scream was like a duck that had been strangled by its neck. It stopped abruptly. It was hilarious. The system wailed, "Host, that's a total of 9,000 points of popularity. You can get it just by dancing." Jiang Pingji sternly stopped it. "Shut up." At the same time, a bullet screen notification was posted in her mind. "Host V, thank you for the love and enthusiasm of the audience. but the live broadcast room refuses to accept any content of the designated live broadcast mode. It's a matter of principle and has nothing to do with anything else. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jiang Pengji briefly explained the voting rules for the semi-interactive mode and the fully interactive mode. Although the live broadcast without a clear theme was very interesting, it also lacked a sense of anticipation. After a long time, people would get tired. Moreover, there was no guarantee that interesting things would happen every time the live broadcast was free. Sometimes she felt that her days were boring and moldy, not to mention the audience sitting in front of the screen watching the live broadcast. The novelty of the live broadcast room could maintain the curiosity in their hearts, but it could not sustain their passion. Although Jiang Pengji was expressionless and there was no flaw in her eyes or expression, Su Ku, who was beside her, sensitively noticed that his Longjuan's good mood was inexplicably covered with a layer of dense fog. She seemed to be extremely unhappy. Could it be that Langjun was extremely disappointed in the people lying on the ground? Su Ku could not help but think more, but before he could figure it out, Jiang Pengji had already stepped forward and taken away the sandalwood fan that he was keeping. You make arrangements for these people. We will go back to the mansion to discuss this at night. We will officially start training tomorrow. If they are still so useless, there is no need to keep them and waste food. Jiang Pengji's face was cold and stern, as if she was suppressing some kind of emotion. It made people subconsciously lower their heads, not daring to make a sound. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.